This doesn't match the official history. We've always believed in 1885, a factory worker in Austria cracked open a lump of coal and something impossible rolled out. A small iron cube with perfectly smooth edges and a groove running around its center as if it had been machined on a lathe. The coal it came from was estimated to be over 20 million years old, 20 million years before humans existed, 20 million years before iron smelting, 20 million years before anything we call civilization. The newspapers called it the Stone Age Bolt. In 1929, an archaeologist digging beneath an ancient city hit a layer of clean clay 2.5 meters thick. Below it, an entirely different civilization. Above it, another. Something catastrophic had buried the first world under 8 feet of flood sediment. And then humanity started over again, building directly on top of the drowned ruins. In 1949, Soviet archaeologists opened a frozen Scythian burial mound and found something that should have rotted away millennia ago. A woven carpet, dark red, featuring horsemen and horses. The knots were finer than Persian carpets made today. It had been sitting in permafrost ice for 2,500 years. And it looked like it had been woven last winter. In the 1990s, gold prospectors washing sediment from the Narada River in Russia began finding tiny metal spirals, 1 to 3 millimeters long, thinner than a human hair. Under a microscope, they looked like precision-engineered springs. Spectral analysis showed they were made of almost pure tungsten with traces of molybdenum, refractory metals, found in rock layers from the Pleistocene, hundreds of thousands of years old. None of this fits. None of this matches the story we tell ourselves about human history. A neat progression from caves to bronze to iron to steel to silicon. A straight line of development. Primitive ancestors slowly becoming less primitive. No mysteries, no gaps, no impossible objects turning up in impossible places, but they keep turning up. They turn up in coal mines and riverbeds, in quarries and bogs, in temple foundations and frozen tombs, objects that should not exist, artifacts that contradict the timeline, evidence of knowledge that appeared too early, or survived too long, or came from somewhere we cannot explain. Most of them are dismissed, hoaxes, misidentifications, contaminated samples. The scientific establishment has a word for them: out-of-place artifacts, parts. A polite way of saying, we do not know what to do with this, so we will put it in a drawer and hope everyone forgets about it. But people do not forget. They cannot forget. Because once you see an iron cube in 20 million year old coal, once you see tungsten nanospirals in Pleistocene sediment, once you see a carpet that survived 2.5 millennia in ice, you start to wonder, what else is out there? What else has been found and filed away? What else are we not being told? And more importantly, what does it mean? What does it mean if the official history is incomplete? What does it mean if human civilization is older than we thought or stranger than we imagined? Or if there were others here before us whose works we have mistaken for geological formations or natural phenomena? These questions have no easy answers. Maybe they have no answers at all. But tonight, We are going to look at the evidence, not the speculation, not the theories, just the objects themselves, the things you can hold in your hands, the things that have been photographed and analyzed and dated and documented. And then you can decide for yourself what to believe. In the deserts of Jordan, carved into rose-red cliffs, there is a city that was lost for over 1,000 years. Petra, the ancient capital of the Nabatean kingdom, was abandoned after the trade routes shifted and the empire that built it faded into history. The city was not destroyed. It was simply forgotten. The local Bedouin knew it existed, but they kept its location secret from outsiders. For centuries, Petra was a legend, a rumor, a place that might or might not be real. When a Swiss explorer rediscovered the city in 1812, he found something extraordinary. Temples and tombs carved directly into the sandstone cliffs, facades that rivaled anything built in Rome or Athens, engineering that channeled water through the desert for kilometers, turning an arid valley into a garden. The Nabateans, who built Petra, left no written records of their techniques. We do not know how they carved such intricate facades into solid rock. We do not know how they calculated the angles and proportions that make the treasury and the monastery so impressive. We do not know where they learned what they knew. The city simply exists, beautiful and mysterious and incomplete, a fragment of a civilization that flourished for a few centuries and then vanished, leaving behind monuments that still astonish visitors 2,000 years later. What else might be out there? What other cities lie buried under desert sand or jungle growth or the accumulated debris of centuries? What other civilizations rose and fell without leaving records, without connecting to the cultures we know, without entering the official narrative of human history? We cannot know until we find them, and we cannot find them until we look, and we cannot look everywhere. The earth is vast, the past is deep, and we are small with limited resources and limited time. Most of what happened is lost forever. Most of the people who ever lived left no trace that we can find. Most of the knowledge that was ever accumulated has been forgotten, but some of it survives in clay and stone and metal, in patterns and alignments and strange objects that do not quite fit, in the ruins of cities that were forgotten for 1,000 years. The past keeps its secrets. But sometimes, if we are patient, if we are persistent, if we are lucky, it reveals a little of what it has hidden. Petra was hidden for 1,000 years. It was found. What else is waiting to be found? Let that question drift into the softness of approaching sleep. Not urgent, not demanding, just floating, like a leaf on still water, like a cloud in an empty sky. In the mountains of eastern Turkey, there are ruins of a fortress that has been described as the eighth wonder of the ancient world. Van Fortress, also called Tushpa, was built by the Eurasian civilization around 800 BCE. The Eurasians are not well known. They flourished in the highlands of Armenia and eastern Turkey for about 300 years, and then they were conquered by the Medes and absorbed into the Persian Empire. Their language is only partially deciphered. Their history is known mainly from the records of their enemies. But they built. They built walls and temples and irrigation systems. They built a civilization in one of the most challenging environments in the ancient world. High altitude, cold winters, limited agricultural land. And then they disappeared, leaving behind ruins that later peoples could not quite understand or replicate. The walls of Van Fortress are made from massive stone blocks, fitted together without mortar, standing firm after nearly 3,000 years. The reservoir systems still function. The inscriptions on the walls, written in a language that fell silent before Alexander the Great was born, record the names of kings and the deeds of a people who thought they would be remembered forever. They were not. The Urartians became a footnote in history, overshadowed by the empires that came after them. But their stones remain, their water systems remain, their questions remain. How many other civilizations are like this? Known only from a few inscriptions and some crumbling walls? How many peoples rose and flourished and fell, contributing to human history in ways we cannot trace, leaving behind artifacts we cannot interpret? The past is full of silences. The past is full of peoples who did not write, or whose writing has not survived, or whose writing we cannot read. The past is full of achievements that were never recorded, and techniques that were never transmitted, and knowledge that was never preserved. We know only what survived. We understand only what we can interpret. We remember only what someone took the trouble to pass on. Everything else is lost. Let that loss rest gently, not as tragedy, just as fact. The way mountains erode, the way rivers shift their courses, the way civilizations rise and fall and rise again, building on the ruins of what came before, forgetting more than they remember. Your body is becoming part of the darkness now. The boundaries between you and the night are dissolving. The edges of your thoughts are softening into something that is no longer quite thought. This is the space where sleep lives. This is the territory between waking and dreaming, between knowing and not knowing, between the world of objects and the world of rest. The artifacts cannot follow you here. The questions cannot reach you here. The mysteries, all those wonderful, puzzling, impossible mysteries, must wait at the border while you cross into the country of sleep. They will be there when you return. They have been waiting for thousands of years. A few more hours is nothing to them. But to you, these hours of rest are everything. Your body needs them. Your mind needs them. Your spirit needs the quiet darkness where thoughts can dissolve and reform into whatever they need to become. So let yourself cross. Let yourself go. Let the border between waking and sleeping become permeable, then invisible, then meaningless. The ancient world is behind you now. The museums and ruins and underwater monuments are receding into distance. The iron cubes and crystal skulls and standing stones are fading into shapes that no longer require attention. Ahead of you is only rest, only peace, only the soft, simple darkness that has been waiting for you all along. This is what the body was made for. This is what the mind craves. This is the rhythm that has sustained every human being since the first humans walked the earth. Waking and sleeping, day and night, effort, and rest. You are part of that rhythm now. You are joining it. You are surrendering to it. The same stars that shone over the cave painters shine over you. The same darkness that held the ancient scribes holds you. The same silence that filled the empty tombs fills the space around you now. You are not separate from history. You are part of it. You are the latest moment in a story that stretches back beyond memory, beyond writing, beyond the oldest artifacts we have ever found. And tonight, you rest, as all your ancestors rested, as all humans have rested since the beginning, in darkness, in quiet, in the temporary death that renews life. The questions will return with the light. The mysteries will be there in the morning. The artifacts will still be sitting in their cases, offering their silent testimony to a past we cannot fully understand. But that is later. That is tomorrow. That is the waking world. For now, there is only this, only sleep, only the ancient communion of consciousness with the darkness that surrounds it. Let go, fall, rest. The past is patient. The mysteries are patient. The artifacts are patient. Only sleep is urgent. Only sleep demands attention now. Only sleep asks anything of you. And what it asks is so simple. Just let go. Just surrender. Just fall into the waiting darkness. The ancient world will catch you. The silence will hold you. The rest will heal you. And when you wake, you will be ready again. Ready to wonder, ready to question, ready to marvel at the strangeness of existence and the achievements of those who came before. But first, you rest. First, you sleep. First, you become nothing but breath and heartbeat and the slow, beautiful surrender of a mind that has finally stopped struggling against the night. Sleep now. Sleep completely. Sleep as the stones sleep in their circles. Sleep as the artifacts sleep in their cases. Sleep as the questions sleep in the minds of all who have wondered enough for one day. The morning will come, the light will return, the mysteries will be waiting. But for now, for these precious hours, for this small eternity of darkness, there's only sleep, only peace, only rest. Let it take you, let it have you, let it be everything. Sleep, sleep, sleep. They turn up in coal mines and riverbeds, in quarries and bogs, in temple foundations and frozen tombs, objects that should not exist, artifacts that contradict the timeline, evidence of knowledge that appeared too early or survived too long or came from somewhere we cannot explain. Most of them are dismissed. Hoaxes, misidentifications, contaminated samples. The scientific establishment has a word for them. Out-of-place artifacts. Ooh parts. A polite way of saying, we do not know what to do with this, so we will put it in a drawer and hope everyone forgets about it. But people do not forget. They cannot forget. Because once you see an iron cube in 20-million-year-old coal, once you see tungsten nanospirals in Pleistocene sediment, once you see a carpet that survived 2.5 millennia in ice, you start to wonder, what else is out there? What else has been found and filed away? What else are we not being told? And more importantly, what does it mean? What does it mean if the official history is incomplete? What does it mean if human civilization is older than we thought, or stranger than we imagined? Or if there were others here before us whose works we have mistaken for geological formations or natural phenomena? These questions have no easy answers. Maybe they have no answers at all, but tonight we are going to look at the evidence, not the speculation, not the theories, just the objects themselves, the things you can hold in your hands, the things that have been photographed and analyzed and dated and documented, and then you can decide for yourself what to believe. The iron cube from Austria still exists. It sits in a museum in Salzburg, where visitors can examine the almost perfect geometry of its surfaces and wonder how a piece of blast furnace slag, which is what the scientists eventually decided it must be, ended up inside a seam of coal that formed before the dinosaurs went extinct. The flood layer beneath the ancient city still exists. Archaeologists call it the evidence of Noah's flood, though they are careful to note that it was regional rather than global. Still, something drowned an entire civilization and buried it under mud, and then another civilization built on top, as if starting from zero. The carpet from the frozen tomb now rests in the Hermitage Museum in St. Petersburg. Visitors stand before it in silence, marveling at the intricate patterns, the vivid colors, the impossible preservation. And they ask themselves how nomads on the steppes of Central Asia learned to weave with such precision thousands of years before the techniques were supposedly developed. The tungsten spirals are in storage somewhere, probably in a university basement, probably in a drawer marked uncertain provenance, or requires further analysis. Every few years, someone writes a paper about them. Every few years, someone offers a new explanation. And every few years, someone points out that the explanations do not quite fit. There are thousands of these objects, tens of thousands, scattered across museums and private collections on every continent. Most of them are mundane. Most of them have explanations that satisfy the curious and reassure the skeptical. But some of them, a stubborn, irreducible few, remain mysteries. Tonight, we are going to meet some of them. We are going to travel through time and across continents, visiting quarries and caves and ancient ruins. We are going to look at things that challenge what we think we know, and we are going to do it slowly, carefully, without rushing to conclusions or demanding answers that may not exist. Because some mysteries are meant to be lived with rather than solved. Some questions are more valuable than their answers, and some nights, like this one, are meant for wondering rather than knowing. So, settle in. Get comfortable. Let the weight of the day fall away from your shoulders. There is nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. No test at the end, no questions to answer, just stories, drifting through the darkness, like fragments of a world we have forgotten. Let us begin. The year is 1899. The place is Colorado Springs, in the high desert of the American West. In a laboratory filled with coils and capacitors and arcing electricity, a man named Nikola Tesla is listening to the sky. Tesla has built the largest Tesla coil ever constructed, a massive apparatus designed to transmit electrical energy without wires. But tonight, he is not transmitting, he is receiving. His equipment has picked up something strange, a rhythmic signal pulsing through the electromagnetic spectrum at regular intervals. 1, 2, 3, pause. 1, 2, 3, pause. The pattern repeats over and over for hours. Tesla is convinced he has detected a message, communication from somewhere beyond the Earth. Perhaps Mars, perhaps somewhere farther. In his notebooks, he writes that the signal is too regular to be natural, too structured to be random noise. Something is trying to talk to him. The scientific community dismisses his claims. Atmospheric interference, they say. Equipment malfunction. The imagination of a man who has spent too many nights alone with his machines. Tesla's reputation suffers. His funding dries up. He dies decades later in a New York hotel room, alone and mostly forgotten, still insisting that something had been sending signals. But the story does not end there. In 1954, newspapers across America report a startling discovery. Astronomers have detected 2 unknown satellites orbiting the Earth. This is 3 years before Sputnik, 3 years before any nation has the capability to put objects into orbit. The satellites are moving in unusual trajectories, polar orbits that take them over every point on the planet's surface. Perfect surveillance paths. Where did they come from? Who put them there? The Air Force investigates, the newspapers speculate, and then silence. The story disappears from the headlines as quickly as it appeared. No explanation is offered. No follow-up investigations are announced. The mysterious satellites are simply forgotten. Decades pass. In 1998, astronauts aboard the Space Shuttle Endeavour are working on the International Space Station when they photograph something unexpected. In the images, a dark object floats against the blue curve of the Earth. It is irregular in shape, almost organic, nothing like the smooth cylinders and solar panels of human spacecraft. It is black, it is silent, and it is definitely there. The photograph spread across the internet, which is still young and hungry for mysteries. People connect the dots. Tesla's signal in 1899, the unknown satellites in 1954, the dark shape in 1998. They give it a name, the Black Knight satellite, and they give it a history, 13,000 years of silent observation, an alien sentinel watching humanity from the darkness of space. The story is compelling. The evidence seems to fit, but your breathing is slowing now. That is good. Let it slow. Let your body remember how to rest. The truth, when it finally emerged, was more mundane than the legend. Tesla's signal was almost certainly natural radio emissions from space, the kind of electromagnetic noise that fills the universe and was poorly understood in 1899. The 1954 satellites were probably misidentified asteroids or equipment malfunctions or journalistic exaggeration. The original sources are vague and contradictory, and the black shape photographed in 1998 was eventually identified as a thermal insulation blanket that had come loose during a spacewalk. It was cataloged as debris item number L25570. It re-entered the atmosphere and burned up a few days later. The Black Knight satellite does not exist. Or rather, the Black Knight satellite never existed as anything more than a collection of unrelated incidents woven together by people who wanted to believe in something watching over us from the stars. And yet, the story persists. Every few months, someone photographs an unusual object in orbit and asks if it might be the Black Knight. Every few years, a documentary revisits the legend and presents the evidence with breathless enthusiasm. The myth is stronger than the facts. The desire for mystery is more powerful than the satisfaction of explanation. Perhaps that is because the explanation, thermal insulation blankets, and atmospheric interference, and journalistic exaggeration does not address the real question. The question Tesla was asking when he listened to the sky in 1899. The question we're all asking when we look up at the stars and wonder, are we alone? The Black Knight cannot answer that question. But the question itself remains, floating in the darkness like debris in orbit, refusing to burn up, refusing to disappear. Let your eyes grow heavy now. You do not need to keep them open. The story will continue whether you are watching or not. In the antique shops of Paris at the end of the 19th century, strange objects began to appear. Skulls carved from solid crystal, polished to a perfect translucence, their empty eye sockets catching the light and throwing it back in rainbows. The sellers claimed they were Maya relics, pulled from jungle temples and smuggled across the ocean. They claimed the skulls sang under the full moon. They claimed the crystals opened doors to other worlds. The legend grew. There were 13 skulls, people said, scattered across the globe. When brought together, they would project a map of the stars or transmit messages from ancient celestial teachers or unlock secrets that had been hidden since the dawn of time. Mediums claimed the crystal resonated with human brain waves. Mystics charged fortunes for activation sessions that would attune your consciousness to the skull's ancient frequency. Museums acquired the skulls. Private collectors paid extraordinary sums. The Mitchell Hedges skull became famous, supposedly discovered in a ruined Maya city by a teenage girl, supposedly possessing supernatural properties, supposedly the most perfect crystal carving ever created by human hands. For nearly a century, the skulls were accepted as genuine artifacts of a lost civilization, evidence of advanced technology in the ancient world, proof that the Maya, or someone, had possessed knowledge that modern science could not explain. Then, in the 1990s, the British Museum decided to take a closer look. Let that thought rest for a moment. There is no hurry. Researchers placed several crystal skulls under scanning electron microscopes. They examined the surfaces at magnifications that revealed individual tool marks, the tiny scratches and grooves left behind by whatever had shaped the crystal. What they found was unexpected. The marks were made by a rotating tool coated with industrial diamond, a tool that could not have existed before the 1860s. The scratches ran in regular parallel lines the signature of mechanical grinding rather than hand polishing, and the crystal itself, quartz of exceptional clarity, showed no internal stress fractures of the kind that would have formed if the skulls had been shaped slowly, patiently, over years of careful handwork. The skulls were modern, almost certainly made in workshops in Germany, where the lapidary industry had perfected techniques for carving hard stone in the 19th century. The Maya connection was a fantasy. The ancient origin was a lie. The crystal skulls were elaborate fakes, created to satisfy the Victorian appetite for mysterious relics from lost civilizations. Most of them, anyway. One skull remains controversial. Not the Mitchell Hedges skull, which has been thoroughly debunked, but an earlier acquisition whose provenance is murky and whose surface shows some marks that do not quite match the industrial patterns. Scientists are nearly certain it is also a fake, but nearly certain it's not completely certain, and in that small gap, in that fraction of a percentage point of doubt, the mystery survives. What if one of them is real? What if somewhere in some jungle temple or museum basement there sits a crystal skull that was actually carved by ancient hands using techniques we do not understand? Probably not. Almost certainly not. But the question lingers, like the faint glow of crystal-catching candlelight, like the empty eye sockets staring back at everyone who looks into them. You are drifting now. Let yourself drift. The crystal skulls will still be there tomorrow. The questions will still be waiting. In the high desert of Libya, there is a place where the sand turns to glass. Not metaphorically, literally. The Libyan desert glass is scattered across hundreds of square kilometers of the Great Sand Sea, chunks and fragments of translucent yellow-green silica that formed when something very hot melted the desert floor into a natural ceramic. The glass is ancient. Estimates suggest it formed roughly 26 million years ago in the late Oligocene epoch. For most of that time, it lay buried beneath the dunes, slowly weathered by sand and wind, waiting to be discovered. The ancient Egyptians found it first. Among the treasures recovered from Tutankhamun's tomb was a carved scarab beetle set into a pectoral ornament. The scarab was made of Libyan desert glass, material that the Egyptians would have had to travel hundreds of kilometers into the open desert to find. They valued it enough to place it on the chest of a dead king to send it with him into eternity. But the Egyptians did not know what the glass was or how it had formed. Neither, for a long time, did anyone else. The mystery deepened in 1945 when a different kind of glass appeared in a different desert. At the Trinity site in New Mexico, where the first nuclear bomb was tested, the sand had been fused into a greenish, glassy substance that scientists named trinitite. It looked remarkably similar to the ancient Libyan glass. The same translucence, the same coloration, the same bubbles trapped in the matrix. Some people drew the obvious conclusion. If nuclear explosions create glass like this, and if ancient glass like this exists in Libya, then perhaps there were nuclear explosions in the ancient past. Perhaps some forgotten civilization destroyed itself in atomic fire. Perhaps the deserts of North Africa are not natural wastelands, but radioactive scars, evidence of a war fought so long ago that even the memory of it has been lost. The theory is dramatic, compelling even, but your body is so heavy now. Let it be heavy. Let the earth hold you. Scientists eventually determined that the Libyan desert glass was almost certainly formed by a meteorite impact or airburst. The heat of a large object entering the atmosphere at cosmic velocities would be sufficient to melt sand into glass across a wide area. Similar glass formations exist at other confirmed impact sites around the world. No nuclear war, no ancient civilization, just a rock from space hitting the desert 26 million years before humans existed. And yet, the glass remains strange. No impact crater has been definitively identified. The chemical composition does not perfectly match known meteorite glasses. Some researchers have suggested alternative explanations: a lower altitude airburst, unusual atmospheric conditions, unknown geological processes. The mystery is not quite solved. The door is not quite closed. And every few years, someone picks up a piece of yellow-green glass from the Libyan sand and wonders. The ancient Egyptians treasured this material enough to bury it with their kings. Did they know something we do not? Did they preserve a memory of fire from the sky, a catastrophe so old it passed from history into myth? The glass does not answer. It simply glows in the desert sunlight, beautiful and silent, keeping its secrets. In Miami, Florida, there is a garden made of coral, not decorative coral, massive blocks of coral rock, some weighing as much as 30 tons, carved into furniture and walls and sculptures, a 9-ton gate that swings open at the touch of a finger, a stone rocking chair that actually rocks, an entire castle built from the fossilized remains of ancient sea creatures. The man who built it was named Edward Leeds Calnan. He was small, barely 5 feet tall and weighing perhaps 100 pounds. He worked alone, always alone, usually at night, when no one could watch. He had no crane, no heavy machinery, no workforce. Just hand tools and a 4th grade education and 30 years of obsessive labor. When asked how he moved stones that should have been impossible for a single person to lift, Leeds Calnan smiled and said he had rediscovered the secrets of the ancient Egyptians. He said he understood the laws of weight and leverage. He said the pyramids were built the same way. He never explained further. He never demonstrated his techniques. He died in 1951, and his secret, if there was a secret, died with him. Visitors to Coral Castle today marvel at the precision of the stonework. Engineers have calculated the forces required to move and position the blocks, and the numbers do not add up. A single small man, working alone, could not have done what Edward Leeds Calnan did. Not with conventional tools, not with conventional physics. Some believe he discovered a form of magnetic levitation, using the Earth's own field to reduce the effective weight of the stones. Some believe he found a way to manipulate gravity itself. Some believe he had help from neighbors who never came forward or from forces beyond our understanding. The mundane explanation is that Leeds Callan used block and tackle systems, lever mechanisms, and infinite patience, that he worked so slowly and so carefully that he never needed to lift anything beyond his own strength. Just inch it along, millimeter by millimeter, year after year, until massive stones somehow ended up balanced on top of walls. The explanation is plausible. The explanation may even be true, but it does not quite satisfy. Let that dissatisfaction rest. You do not need to resolve it. Some things simply remain uncertain. You are somewhere between waking and sleeping now. That is a good place to be. The mysteries feel closer here. The questions feel less urgent. The need for answers fades into something softer. Curiosity without anxiety. Wonder without demand. In the forests of Russia, buried in a peat bog, archaeologists found something that should not have survived. A wooden idol carved from a single pine log, more than 5 meters tall, covered in geometric patterns and 7 strange faces looking in different directions. The first radiocarbon dating suggested the idol was 9,500 years old, older than Stonehenge, older than the pyramids, older than any monumental construction we know of. Recent testing pushed the age even further, 12,100 years, created at the end of the last ice age, when glaciers still covered much of Europe and human populations were scattered bands of hunter-gatherers without permanent settlements or complex social structures. And yet, some group of Ice Age people took the time to carve an enormous wooden figure. They decorated it with patterns whose meaning we cannot decipher. They transported it to a specific bog and deliberately sank it, weighting it down with stones so it would not float back to the surface. Why? What did the faces represent? What message was carved into the zigzag lines that cover the shaft? Was it a god, a map, a calendar, a record of something that happened, or a prophecy of something to come? The idol offers no answers. It simply stares with 7 sets of eyes in 7 directions, as it has been staring for 12 millennia. The acidic water of the bog preserved the wood far better than any tomb or temple could have. Traces of stone tool marks are still visible on the surface, the signatures of flint blades heated and cooled to cut through living pine. Whoever made this knew what they were doing. They had techniques, they had plans, they had reasons, but all of that knowledge is lost. All we have is the object itself, the oldest wooden sculpture ever discovered, standing silent in a museum in Yekaterinburg, offering no explanation for its existence, no context for its creation, no key to unlock the minds that imagined it into being. Some researchers think the horizontal notches divide the idol into 3 cosmic realms: sky, earth, and underworld. Others see a genealogy, 7 generations of ancestors looking outward to protect their descendants. Still others believe the zigzags encode astronomical observations, the positions of stars as seen from the Ural Mountains 12,000 years ago. None of these interpretations can be proven. None can be disproven. The idol keeps its secrets the way the bog kept its wood, sealed away in darkness, waiting for someone to understand. Your breathing has become so slow you barely notice it. That is exactly right. In and out, in and out, like tides, like centuries, like the patient rise and fall of civilizations building and falling and building again. In the quarries of Aswan in southern Egypt, there lies an unfinished monument, a granite obelisk still attached to the bedrock, abandoned mid-carving more than 3,000 years ago. The scale is almost impossible to comprehend. If completed, the obelisk would have stood over 40 meters tall and weighed more than 1,000 tons. It would have been the largest single piece of worked stone in the ancient world, perhaps the largest ever attempted by human hands. The surface shows clear tool marks, long grooves where the rock was slowly abraded, round hollows where it was pounded with crushing blows. The technique is visible, recorded in the granite like a textbook of ancient engineering, but the technique does not explain everything. How do you move a 1,000-ton block of stone? How do you transport it from quarry to temple across hundreds of kilometers of desert? How do you raise it upright and position it with the precision that Egyptian monuments demand? Modern engineers have calculated the forces involved, the ropes that would be needed, the ramps, the rollers, the armies of workers pulling in coordinated teams. The numbers are staggering. The logistics are barely credible, and the Egyptians did it repeatedly, as if cutting and moving mountains of stone was simply what one did. The unfinished obelisk cracked during carving, a flaw in the granite, invisible until the workers went too deep, suddenly became a catastrophic fracture running through the heart of the stone. The project was abandoned. The obelisk was left where it lay, frozen in the moment of its failure. Today it is a tourist attraction. Visitors walk beside it, their hands trailing across granite that was last touched by human workers before Rome existed. They take photographs, they marvel at the ambition, and they ask the same question everyone asks: how did they do it? The official answer involves copper tools and sand abrasives and wooden sledges and millions of hours of labor. The official answer is probably correct. The official answer does not feel like enough. Some mysteries are not about missing facts. They are about missing understanding. We know what the Egyptians did. We can see the evidence with our own eyes. We simply cannot quite believe that people with copper and wood and muscle accomplished what they accomplished. Maybe that says more about us than about them. Maybe we have lost something, some confidence, some willingness to attempt the impossible that the ancients possessed and we have forgotten. Or maybe they knew something we do not. Some technique, some trick, some secret that was never written down because everyone knew it until one day no one knew it anymore and it was lost. Let that thought drift away. You do not need to hold it. You do not need to solve the puzzle of the pyramids tonight. The stones have been waiting for thousands of years. They can wait a little longer. In the boglands of France, in a small village called Glozelle, a teenage farmer discovered something strange while plowing his field. A stone ring, and beneath it, clay tablets covered in mysterious symbols. The year was 1924. The farmer's name was Emile Fradin. He was 17 years old, working land his family had worked for generations, and suddenly he was at the center of an archaeological controversy that would consume decades of scholarly debate. The tablets were small, palm-sized, covered with hundreds of odd symbols. Some looked like Phoenician letters. Some resembled runes. Others matched nothing in any known alphabet. Along with the tablets, Fradin found bones, glass beads, and pottery fragments. A jumbled collection of objects that seemed to span thousands of years. Experts descended on Glozell. Arguments erupted. Some archaeologists proclaimed the discovery authentic, evidence of a prehistoric writing system that predated all known scripts. Others insisted it was a hoax, a clumsy forgery planted by someone hoping to attract attention to an obscure French village. The confusion deepened as excavations continued. In the same layers of soil, researchers found an 18th century iron knife, a Neolithic flint scraper, and mysterious tablets that fit no known historical period. Either the site had been used continuously for millennia, with objects from different eras mixed together in the same soil, or someone had deliberately salted the ground with artifacts from multiple periods. Thermoluminescence testing in the 1970s suggested some tablets were fired 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, while others were made only a few centuries back. The collection was genuine, at least parts of it, but other parts were definitely modern additions. The mystery is twofold. First, we cannot read the symbols on the authentic tablets. No one has ever deciphered the Glozell script, if it is a script at all. Second, we do not know who mixed the collection, who added modern forgeries to ancient originals, or why. Emile Fradin maintained his innocence until his death in 2010 at the age of 103. He never confessed to any deception. He never wavered in his story. And the tablets remain, some authentic, some forged, all unreadable, in a small museum in Glozell, where visitors can examine them and form their own conclusions. The Glozell artifacts do not prove anything. They do not disprove anything. They simply exist, stubbornly ambiguous, refusing to resolve into either confirmation or debunking. Maybe that is why they endure. In a world that demands certainty, that insists on binary choices between real and fake, ancient and modern, the Glozell tablets offer something different. They offer doubt. They offer complexity. They remind us that the past is not a simple story with clear heroes and villains, but a tangled mess of truth and deception, preservation and loss, memory and forgetting. Some of what we think we know is wrong. Some of what we have dismissed is real. And often, perhaps more often than we would like, we cannot tell the difference. You are so relaxed now. Your body knows how to rest. It has been resting since long before you were born. In the darkness before birth, in the silence between heartbeats, in the gaps between thoughts. Let it remember. Behind a church in Aksum, Ethiopia, there is a small chapel. Inside the chapel, according to local tradition, rests the Ark of the Covenant, the gold-covered acacia chest described in the Hebrew Bible. the container of the stone tablets inscribed with the Ten Commandments, the most sacred object in ancient Israelite religion. Only one person is allowed to enter the chapel where the ark is kept. A single monk, the guardian, who spends his entire life within the church compound, never leaving, never showing the relic to anyone. Pilgrims can approach the outer walls. They can see a dark shape beneath a veil. They can hear stories of lightning that strikes those who touch the ark without blessing. But they cannot see the object itself. They cannot photograph it. They cannot verify that it exists. The Ethiopian claim is ancient. Church tradition holds that the ark was brought to Ethiopia by Menelik I, the son of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, more than 3,000 years ago. It has remained in Ethiopian custody ever since, protected by a succession of guardians who take their responsibility with absolute seriousness. Is the ark really there? No one knows. The chapel has never been opened to outside investigators. No scientific examination has ever been conducted. The Ethiopian Church has no interest in proving or disproving anything. The ark is a matter of faith, not archaeology. But the stories persist, and some of them are strange. Some enthusiasts have interpreted the biblical description of the ark as a primitive electrical device. The specifications given in Exodus, gold plating inside and out, wooden core, ornamental cherubim on the lid, resemble the structure of a capacitor. Gold is an excellent conductor. Wood is an insulator. The wings of the cherubim could serve as contacts. In the dry air of the desert, such a device might accumulate significant static charge. People have built replicas. Some have generated measurable voltage from static electricity. Not much, not enough to kill, but enough to shock anyone who touches the metal unexpectedly. Is that what the ark was? A religious object that happened to accumulate electrical charge, creating the impression of divine power? A technological artifact whose function was misunderstood and mythologized over centuries? Probably not. The specifications in Exodus can be explained in many ways. The stories of divine fire and death probably grew in the telling, as stories do. The ark, if it exists, is probably an ordinary wooden chest, sacred because of what it represents rather than what it does. Probably, but behind a locked door in Ethiopia, something sits in darkness, and no one, not the faithful, not the skeptics, not the curious, knows for certain what it is. Let the uncertainty rest. You do not need to resolve it. Some doors remain closed. Some questions remain unanswered. That is not failure. That is simply the way of things. In India, in the courtyard of an ancient mosque, stands a pillar of iron. It has been standing there for 1,500 years, exposed to rain and sun and the humid air of the subcontinent. And in all that time, it has barely rusted. This should be impossible. Iron oxidizes. It is one of the most basic facts of chemistry. Expose iron to moisture and oxygen, and it will develop a reddish-brown coating of rust within weeks. Within years, the rust will consume the metal entirely. Within centuries, nothing will remain but flakes of oxide crumbling into dust. The Delhi iron pillar defies this expectation. Its surface is dark, almost black, covered with a thin protective film that blocks oxygen and prevents the corrosion that should have destroyed it long ago. How? Legend claims the pillar was forged by heavenly blacksmiths using divine recipes. Visitors wrap their arms around it, believing that touching the metal grants wishes. Tour guides speak of mysteries and ancient secrets. The scientific explanation is less dramatic, but more interesting. The pillar was made from wrought iron with an unusually high phosphorus content and almost no sulfur. When rain slightly corrodes the surface, the phosphorus reacts with the iron oxide to form a dense protective layer, a passive film that is more effective than any paint or coating. The craftsman who made the pillar positioned it so the phosphorus-rich faces pointed toward the midday sun. The warmth accelerated the formation of the protective layer. What looks like magic is actually careful engineering, an understanding of materials and chemistry that allowed 5th century blacksmiths to create something that would outlast empires. But that understanding raises its own questions. How did they know? Without blast furnaces or laboratories, without the periodic table or molecular theory, how did ancient Indian metal workers figure out that high phosphorus content would protect against rust? How did they know which ores to select, which processes to use, which orientation would work best? The answer is probably trial and error. Generations of smiths working with available materials, noticing that some iron lasted longer than other iron, gradually selecting for the properties that produced durability. No magic, no lost technology, just patient observation accumulated over centuries. But the pillar still stands. The railings around it rust and must be replaced. The staircases corrode and crumble, and the 1,500-year-old iron column remains dark and gleaming, keeping its phosphorus secret in plain sight. Your eyes may be closed now. That is good. The pillar will still be there tomorrow. The questions will still be waiting. For now, let yourself sink into the darkness between thoughts. In the Altai Mountains, on the border between Russia and Mongolia, archaeologists opened a burial mound and found a time capsule, a frozen tomb from the Iron Age, sealed in permafrost for 2,500 years, containing objects that should have crumbled to dust millennia ago. The carpet was the most striking find, a woven textile, dark red with yellow and blue accents, featuring a repeating pattern of horsemen and horses around a central medallion. The knots were tight and regular. The colors were still vivid. The craftsmanship was extraordinary. This was not supposed to survive. Organic materials, wool, silk, leather, wood, decay. They are consumed by bacteria and insects. They rot, they crumble, they return to the earth from which they came. A carpet buried in a grave should become soil within a few generations, but the Pazyryk carpet endured. The burial mound was built on permafrost. Meltwater seeped into the tomb each spring, then froze again when winter came. The bodies and objects inside were preserved in ice, sealed away from the air and microbes that would have destroyed them. When Soviet archaeologists broke through the frozen crust in 1949, they found not just the carpet, but an entire world. A wooden cart with decorated wheels, horse harnesses adorned with gold, felt tapestries showing griffins and deer, the tattooed body of a chieftain, his skin still bearing intricate designs of fantastical animals. The nomads who built this tomb lived before Alexander the Great. They left no written records. We know almost nothing about their beliefs, their language, their stories. But we have their art. We have their craftsmanship. We have their carpet with its knotwork finer than anything produced by later civilizations that considered themselves more advanced. Where did they learn to weave like this? Who taught them the techniques? How did nomads on the open steppe, people who spent their lives following herds from pasture to pasture, develop skills that would not be matched for 1,000 years? The carpet offers no answers. It simply exists, beautiful and impossible, preserved by accident in a tomb of ice. And visitors to the Hermitage Museum stand before it in silence, wondering how much else has been lost. How many other carpets rotted in ordinary graves? How many other crafts disappeared because no permafrost preserved them? The past is not a straight line. It is not a ladder we climb from primitive to advanced. It is a forest, dense and dark, full of branching paths and dead ends, illuminated only in scattered patches where accidents of preservation allow us to see what once existed. Most of the forest remains dark. Most of what happened is lost forever. We know only what survived, and what survived is random, determined by the chemistry of bogs and the temperature of mountains and the chance decisions of people who buried things in places where they would last. The carpet lasted. The tungsten spirals lasted. The iron cube lasted, or at least something that looks like an iron cube. And now we try to make sense of them, try to fit them into a story that probably does not include everything, try to understand a past that is far stranger and more complex than any textbook can contain. You are floating now, floating in the space between waking and sleeping, between certainty and doubt, between the known and the unknown. This is where the mysteries live. This is where the questions feel less like problems to solve and more like doorways to pass through. In the coal mines of Russia, in the Kuzbas region, miners cutting through seams of ancient carbon found something that did not belong. A thin gold ring embedded in coal that formed 40 million years ago. The newspapers reported pre-flood jewelry. The internet speculated about time travelers and ancient civilizations. The ring was photographed and analyzed and argued about. It turned out to be gold alloyed with platinum, a combination unknown before the late 19th century. Geologists reconstructed the likely sequence of events. A cave-in at the mine, decades before the ring was found, had trapped debris from the surface, including a miner's ring, in a crack that was later sealed by pressure and heat. The ring was not ancient. It had simply taken an unusual journey into the coal. But one detail troubled the researchers. Under the microscope, the ring's surface showed a flawless mirror coating with no wear at all, as if it had rested in a vacuum. as if it had never been worn on a finger, never touched by human hands, never exposed to the friction and abrasion of daily life. Maybe it was a spare ring, never worn. Maybe the polishing process created an unusually durable surface. Maybe the conditions inside the coal, the pressure and heat and absence of oxygen, preserved the metal in ways we do not fully understand. The ring sits behind glass now at the entrance to the mine. Every shift, workers pause to look at it. Some touch the display for luck. Some wonder, what if the explanation is wrong? What if this ring really is part of a story we have not uncovered yet? Probably not. Almost certainly not. But the question remains, like a thin gold band encircling the wrist of history. You do not need to answer the question. You do not need to explain the ring. You do not need to do anything at all. Just rest. Just breathe. Just let the weight of uncertainty settle around you like a blanket. In the caves of central China, in the Bayan Karaula Mountains, archaeologists reportedly found something extraordinary in 1938. Stone discs the size of a palm, each with a central hole and a spiral groove running from center to edge. Under magnification, the grooves contained tiny hieroglyphs. The symbols told a story of beings called the Dropa, who crashed in the mountains after arriving from a distant star 12,000 years ago. The legend grew. There were 716 discs stored at a university in Beijing. One of them emitted a strange electrical impulse during testing. The symbols described the crash, the stranded survivors, their attempts to communicate with local humans, their eventual fate. It was the most spectacular archaeological find of the century. Evidence of ancient alien contact, inscribed in stone and waiting for someone to decode the message. There was only one problem. The discs did not exist. When researchers tried to locate the artifacts, they found nothing. No university in Beijing had them in storage. No museum in China had records of their existence. The expedition that supposedly discovered them had never been documented. The hieroglyphic translation was eventually traced to a German journalist who admitted he had based his story on tales from local guides without ever seeing an original disc. The Dropa stones were a hoax, a fabrication, a story built from nothing and repeated until it felt true. And yet, every few years, someone finds a stone disc in a Chinese cave. It has a hole in the center. It has spiral grooves. It looks exactly like the description of the legendary Dropa records. And every time people ask, what if this one is real? What if the original story was based on something genuine? Something that was later lost or hidden or destroyed? Every time, the disc turns out to be an ordinary burial slab, common in Neolithic cultures throughout the region. The spirals are decorative. The grooves contain no hieroglyphs. The connection to visitors from the stars exists only in imagination. But the story refuses to die, because once you have heard the legend of the Dropa stones, you cannot look at a spiral carved in rock without wondering, what if? What if the next one is different? What if somewhere, buried in a cave that has not been explored, there really is a message from the stars? Almost certainly not, but almost is not never. And in that gap between almost and never, the legend lives. The distinction between hoax and mystery is not always clear. Some hoaxes contain grains of truth. Some mysteries turn out to be fabrications, and sometimes a story is both at once. True in one sense and false in another, real in its inspiration and invented in its details. The world is not divided neatly into facts and lies. The world is complicated. The past is complicated. And we, trying to understand it from our small moment in time, are often unable to tell the difference between what was and what never was. Let that complexity exist. Do not try to resolve it. Do not demand that the world be simpler than it is. Just let it be, tangled and uncertain and strange. Your breathing is so slow now, so gentle, in and out, like waves on a beach where no one is watching, like wind through grass in a field where no one is listening. In the ruins of Mohenjo-Daro, in what is now Pakistan, archaeologists excavating one of humanity's oldest cities found small bronze rings. Each ring was barely 1.5 centimeters in diameter. Under magnification, the inner surfaces showed tiny marks, 4 or 5 lines of something that looked almost like text. The Indus Valley civilization had writing. We have thousands of inscriptions on seals and tablets, but the script has never been deciphered. We do not know what language it represents. We do not know what the symbols mean. And the marks on the rings were smaller than anything else ever found, as if the craftsman could write finer than a human hair. Decades later, the rings were examined with electron microscopes. Some of the scratches did match characters from the Indus script, but others were random. Dents and corrosion, crystals of copper forming on the bronze, the natural weathering of metal over 4,000 years. The rings were probably signature stamps used to imprint marks in clay or fabric. The apparent writing was partly genuine and partly an illusion created by time and decay. The mystery dissolved into the ordinary. Another artifact explained, another question answered. But the idea of Indus nano-writing persisted. Every time another bronze ring emerges from the excavations, researchers reach for microscopes. What if this one is different? What if this one really does contain a message inscribed by ancient hands at a scale that seems impossible? The Indus script remains undeciphered. Whatever the rings say, if they say anything, we cannot read it. The voices of Mohenjo-Daro are silent, speaking a language that no one alive understands. There is something melancholy about lost languages. All those thoughts, all those stories, all those names and prayers and jokes and complaints, scratched into clay and bronze and stone, preserved for millennia, and now utterly meaningless. Symbols without sound, signs without significance, messages sent across time to recipients who cannot hear them. Maybe one day we will crack the Indus code. Maybe linguists will find the key that unlocks the script, and we will finally hear what the people of Mohenjo-Daro were trying to say. Maybe the rings will turn out to contain poems or contracts or letters to distant relatives, or maybe not. Maybe the script will remain forever silent. Maybe some messages are simply lost, no matter how carefully they were preserved, no matter how long they survive. The past speaks, but we do not always understand. The past reaches out, but we cannot always grasp what it offers. The past is there, waiting, patient as bronze in the earth, but we may never know what it wanted to tell us. Let the silence be. Let the mystery rest. Let the undeciphered voices fade into the soft darkness at the edge of sleep. In the mountains of Bolivia, near the shores of Lake Titicaca, a farmer digging in his field unearthed a heavy stone bowl, almost half a meter in diameter, carved with patterns on the outside, the typical geometric designs of Andean cultures. But inside, on the lower surface, something unexpected. Small symbols that looked remarkably like Sumerian cuneiform. The legend spread quickly. Mesopotamian sailors had crossed the ocean 3,000 years before Columbus. They had brought their writing system to the Andes, leaving behind this sacred vessel as proof of contact between the old world and the new. It was a beautiful story. It would rewrite everything we thought we knew about ancient navigation and cultural exchange. It would prove that the ancients were more capable, more adventurous, more connected than we had imagined. When researchers at the University of La Paz examined the bowl under microscopes, they found a different story. The wedge-shaped marks were uneven, cut off midway, as if the craftsman had been copying symbols from a drawing without understanding where they should begin or end. The stone itself was local volcanic tuff, carved with tools typical of the 20th century. The inner surface was coated with a honeycomb patina, hardened tree resin varnish, popular among Bolivian craftsmen in the early 1900s. The Fuente Magna bowl was almost certainly a modern forgery, a tourist souvenir perhaps, an amateur's attempt to create something mysterious, mistakenly labeled as an ancient artifact when it ended up in the wrong hands. But the bowl remains on display in a museum in Tiahuanaco. Visitors examine the symbols and make their own judgments. The Andean patterns on the outside are genuinely beautiful. The Sumerian script on the inside, whether authentic or invented, sparks questions and conversations that might never happen otherwise. Maybe that is worth something. Maybe a well-crafted mystery, even a fabricated one, serves a purpose. It makes us wonder. It makes us question. It reminds us that the past is full of possibilities we have not yet imagined, even if some of those possibilities turn out to be illusions. The line between inspiration and deception is thin. The line between mystery and fraud is thinner still. And we, walking that line in the darkness, cannot always tell which side we are on. You are so deep now, so far from the waking world, so close to the place where questions dissolve and answers do not matter. In the Siberian rivers, gold prospectors washing sediment have found strange metal fragments for decades. Tiny spirals, 1 to 3 millimeters long, made of tungsten and molybdenum, refractory metals, materials that require extreme temperatures to work, far beyond anything available to ancient cultures. The spirals appeared in Pleistocene geological layers. sediments deposited hundreds of thousands of years ago, long before modern humans existed. The implications were staggering. Either someone was manufacturing precision metal components in the Ice Age, or the spirals represented evidence of something we could not explain. Enthusiasts spoke of prehistoric technology, lost civilizations, probes from alien visitors, broken and scattered, their components working their way into ancient riverbeds over unimaginable spans of time. The scientific explanation was more mundane. Soviet geological surveys in the region had used tungsten-tipped drilling equipment for decades. As the drill bits wore out, fragments broke off and tumbled into ravines, eventually washing into the rivers. The current shaped them into spirals. The sediment they landed in was ancient, but the spirals themselves were modern. Case closed, mystery solved. Another out-of-place artifact explained away by contamination and coincidence. And yet, the shape of some spirals is remarkably precise. The coils are regular and uniform, more like engineered springs than random metal shavings. Some researchers remain skeptical that natural processes could produce such geometric perfection from ordinary industrial debris. Most likely, the explanation is correct. Most likely, the spirals are nothing more than worn drill bits transformed by water and time. Most likely, there is nothing mysterious about them at all, most likely. But in the riverbeds of Siberia, gold prospectors still find them, and sometimes, holding a tiny metal coil in the palm of their hand, they wonder, what if this one is different? What if the official explanation misses something? What if the ancient rivers really do contain evidence of things we are not ready to accept? The wondering is probably futile. The wondering is almost certainly wrong, but the wondering continues, because that is what humans do. We wonder, we question, we refuse to accept that the mystery is solved until every last doubt has been erased, and some doubts are very hard to erase. Let the doubt float. Let it drift beside you in the darkness like a companion rather than a problem. Not everything needs to be resolved. Not everything needs to make sense. The unfinished obelisk still lies in the quarries of Aswan, 42 meters long, over 1,000 tons of granite, shaped by human hands with techniques we think we understand. A crack in the stone stopped the work, and now the obelisk waits, frozen in the moment of its failure, inviting visitors to touch the surface and feel the grooves where ancient tools once moved. The Shigir idol stands in its museum case, 12,000 years of carved wood staring out at a world that has changed beyond recognition since it was made. 7 faces, countless mysteries, no explanations. The Paseric carpet hangs in the hermitage, its colors still bright after 2.5 millennia, its knots tighter than anything woven today. A testament to skills we did not know existed, a reminder of how much has been lost. The Delhi iron pillar stands in its courtyard, dark and gleaming, 1,500 years of resistance to the forces that should have destroyed it. A monument to chemistry we thought we invented. A question about what ancient people knew that we have forgotten. And somewhere in museum basements and private collections, in forgotten drawers and storage rooms, thousands of other objects wait. The iron cube from Austria, the gold ring from the coal mine, the tungsten spirals from the Siberian rivers, the tablets from Glozell, the crystal skulls, some fake, some uncertain, the Libyan desert glass, the ark behind its locked door. Each one a question, each one a challenge, each one a fragment of a story we do not fully understand. Maybe the official explanations are correct. Maybe every mystery has a mundane solution, and we simply have not found it yet. Maybe the past is exactly what we think it is, a slow progression from simple to complex, from primitive to advanced, with no gaps and no surprises. Maybe. Or maybe the past is stranger than we imagine. Maybe there were people who knew things we have forgotten. Maybe there were civilizations that rose and fell and left no trace except scattered artifacts that we dismiss as hoaxes or misidentifications. Maybe the neat timeline we have constructed is incomplete, and the true story is far more complicated than any textbook can contain. We do not know. We cannot know. The evidence is fragmentary. The interpretations are contested. The truth, if there is a single truth, may be forever beyond our reach. But we can wonder. We can question. We can hold the mysteries in our minds like smooth stones, turning them over, examining them from different angles, appreciating their strangeness without needing to solve them. That is what tonight has been. Not answers, not conclusions, just questions, just objects, just the weight of things that do not quite fit, pressing gently against the edges of what we think we know. Let that weight settle now. Let it become part of you. Let it rest in the same place where dreams are born and forgotten things wait to be remembered. You have traveled far tonight, through quarries and caves, through museums and mountains, through time itself, touching objects that have waited millennia for someone to notice them. Now it is time to rest. The mysteries will still be there when you wake. The questions will still be waiting. The iron cube and the golden ring and the tungsten spirals and the ancient carpet. They have been patient for thousands of years. They can be patient a little longer. For now, let yourself sink into the darkness. Let your breathing become waves. Let your thoughts become clouds, drifting across an empty sky. Let the weight of history press you gently into sleep, like sediment settling on a riverbed, like artifacts sinking into the earth, like questions dissolving into the silence between heartbeats. You do not need to solve anything. You do not need to understand anything. You do not need to remember anything. Just rest. The past will keep its secrets. The stones will keep their silence. The museums will keep their doors closed, protecting objects that may or may not be what they seem. And you will drift. You will float. You will fall through the space between waking and sleeping, between knowing and wondering, between the world as we understand it and the world as it might actually be. Sleep now. The archaeologists are still digging. Somewhere in the world, right now, someone is brushing dirt from a surface that has not seen light in centuries. Someone is photographing an object that does not quite make sense. Someone is writing a report that will be filed away and forgotten, or published and debated, or dismissed and ignored. The search continues, the questions multiply, the mysteries deepen with every new discovery. But that is a problem for tomorrow. That is a weight for waking shoulders to carry. Tonight, you rest. Tonight, you let go. Tonight, you become part of the great silence that holds all the artifacts and all the questions and all the unanswered riddles of human history. The past is patient. The stones are patient. The darkness is patient. And you are finally, peacefully, completely at rest. Let the words fade now. Let the stories dissolve. Let everything become soft and quiet and still. The obelisk waits in its quarry. The idol stares from its case. The carpet hangs in its museum. The pillar stands in its courtyard. And you sleep deep, dreamless, safe. The mysteries will wait. They have been waiting for thousands of years. They can wait one more night. Sleep, sleep. The silence between stars, the darkness between heartbeats, the space between questions and answers. Rest there, float there, be still. The past does not need you to be awake. The artifacts do not need you to be watching. The questions do not need you to be thinking. Everything can simply be. And you can simply sleep gently, slowly, completely. The way rivers carve canyons over millions of years, the way permafrost preserves carpets over millennia, the way iron pillars stand unchanged through centuries. Patient, quiet, enduring, like the mysteries themselves, like the darkness that holds them, like the sleep that holds you now. But before you drift completely away, let us linger a moment longer in the space where wonders live. There are more stories waiting, more objects sitting in their cases, more questions hovering in the dusty air of archives and excavation sites. You do not have to pay attention. You do not have to remember. Just let the words wash over you like water over stones, smoothing everything, softening everything, carrying you deeper into rest. In the Egyptian desert, in the ruins of a temple at Dendera, there are carvings on the walls that have puzzled researchers for over a century. Among the hieroglyphs and ritual scenes, there appears an image that looks strange. A long bulbous shape, tapering at one end, with what appears to be a serpent inside it. Beneath the shape, figures seem to be holding it, or presenting it, or worshiping it. Some people look at this carving and see a lotus flower. The conventional interpretation says it represents the Egyptian creation myth. The first lotus emerging from the primordial waters, the serpent symbolizing divine energy, the supporting figures representing priests or gods. Other people look at the same carving and see something else entirely. They see a shape that resembles an electrical discharge tube, a glass bulb, a filament inside, supporting structures that could be insulators. They see evidence that the ancient Egyptians possessed electric lighting thousands of years before Thomas Edison. The Dendera light, as it has come to be called, has generated endless debate. Proponents point out that the dark interiors of Egyptian tombs show no soot deposits from oil lamps or torches. How did the artists see to paint their elaborate murals in total darkness? How did the sculptors carve their precise reliefs without any apparent source of illumination? Skeptics respond that reflected sunlight, channeled through polished copper mirrors, could illuminate even the deepest chambers. They note that the dendera carving appears alongside dozens of other religious symbols that no one interprets as technology. They argue that seeing a light bulb in an ancient relief says more about the observer than about the observed. Who is right? The question remains open. The carving remains on its wall, worn by centuries of wind-blown sand, visited by tourists who photograph it and argue about what they see. The ancient artists left no manual. They left no explanation. They left only the image itself, ambiguous and eternal, inviting interpretation without providing answers. Let that ambiguity rest softly in your mind, not as a problem to solve, just as something that exists, something that reminds us how much we assume when we look at the past. The Baghdad Battery is another puzzle from another desert. Discovered in 1936 near the ancient city of Aswan in Iraq, this artifact consists of a clay jar about the size of a fist, containing a copper cylinder with an iron rod inside. The components are corroded but recognizable. The arrangement is suggestive but unexplained. If you fill a jar like this with an acidic solution, vinegar perhaps, or wine or lemon juice, you create a simple galvanic cell, a battery, a source of electrical current, weak but measurable. Experiments with replicas have generated up to 2 volts using grape juice as the electrolyte. Did the ancient Parthians know about electricity? Were they using these jars to power something? Small lights, perhaps? Or electroplating baths? Or medical devices? Or were the jars simply storage vessels, their metallic contents coincidentally arranged in a pattern that we, with our modern knowledge, recognize as potentially electrical? No ancient text describes the jars or their use. No other examples have been found in similar contexts. The one artifact sits alone, offering possibilities without confirmation, suggesting knowledge without proving it. Archaeologists have proposed alternative explanations. The jars might have held sacred scrolls with the metal components protecting against moisture. They might have been containers for wine or oil, with the copper and iron serving as structural elements. The fact that the configuration could work as a battery does not mean it was intended as a battery. And yet, the possibility lingers. Somewhere in a museum in Baghdad, if it survived the looting and chaos of recent decades, there may be a jar that ancient hands filled with acid and connected to copper wires, producing a current that lit a small lamp or coated a statue with gold. Or there may be just another piece of pottery, misinterpreted by modern eyes that see electricity everywhere because electricity is what we know. The truth is probably unknowable. The artifact is ambiguous. The context is lost. And we are left with speculation dressed as analysis, wondering dressed as knowing. Your breathing is so gentle now, so rhythmic, in and out, like the slow pulse of current through an ancient wire or the steady drip of acid into a forgotten jar. The Antikythera mechanism was pulled from the seafloor in 1901, crusted with coral and corroded by salt water, a lump of bronze that divers assumed was part of a statue. It was only when researchers began cleaning the fragments that they realized what they had found. Gears, dozens of them, precisely cut teeth, meshing with one another in complex arrangements. A mechanism of bronze clockwork encased in a wooden box, lost when a Roman ship sank near the Greek island of Antikythera sometime in the 1st century before Christ. For decades, no one quite believed what the fragments seemed to show. The technology was too advanced, the engineering was too sophisticated. Nothing comparable would appear in the historical record for another 1,000 years. The Antikythera mechanism was simply impossible. Slowly, painstakingly, researchers pieced together what the device had been: an astronomical calculator, an analog computer operated by hand crank, capable of predicting the positions of the sun and moon, the phases of the lunar cycle, the timing of eclipses, and the dates of the Olympic Games. The gears tracked multiple astronomical cycles simultaneously, translating the complex mathematics of celestial motion into the rotation of bronze wheels. Someone in the ancient world understood gear ratios and differential mechanisms and epicyclic gearing. Someone designed and built a precision instrument that would not be equaled until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. Someone possessed knowledge that we thought did not exist. And then that knowledge was lost, sunk in the sea, forgotten for 2,000 years. How many other mechanisms were built? How many other devices existed, copied and improved over generations until some catastrophe, war, earthquake, the slow collapse of empire erased them from history? How much did the ancients know that we have had to rediscover? The Antikythera mechanism is not speculation. It is not ambiguous. It sits in a museum in Athens, its gears visible under careful lighting, its purpose proven by mathematics and analysis. It is real. It is undeniable. And it proves that our assumptions about ancient technology are incomplete. If one such device survived by accident, how many others did not? How many lie on the seafloor still, corroded beyond recognition? How many were melted down for their bronze, their complexity destroyed to make weapons or coins or cooking pots? How much has been lost that we will never recover? The mechanism does not answer these questions. It simply demonstrates that such questions are worth asking. Let that demonstration rest with you, not as an argument, not as a conclusion, just as a fact. A bronze fact, pulled from the sea, forcing us to reconsider what we thought we knew. In the jungles of Costa Rica, scattered across farms and forests, there are stone spheres, hundreds of them. Some are small enough to hold in your hands. Others are larger than automobiles, weighing 16 tons or more. All of them are nearly perfectly round, carved from local granite and gabbro, by people who left no written records and whose civilization had collapsed before the Spanish arrived. The Diquis spheres, as they are called, were made between 600 and 1500 AD by a culture we know almost nothing about. We do not know their purpose. We do not know their meaning. We do not know how they were shaped so perfectly using stone tools, or how the larger ones were transported through dense jungle, or why anyone would invest such enormous effort in creating geometric abstractions from solid rock. Some spheres were found in alignments, arranged in patterns that might be astronomical or ceremonial or simply decorative. Most were scattered individually, as if placed with specific intention in specific locations, whose significance is now lost. The jungle grew over them. Later generations forgot they existed. When banana plantations cleared the forest in the 1930s, workers found the spheres standing silently among the trees, covered in moss and vines, waiting. The precision of the carving is remarkable. The largest spheres deviate from true roundness by only millimeters over meters of circumference. Achieving this accuracy with stone hammers and abrasive sand requires either extreme patience or techniques we do not understand. Some researchers believe the carvers used templates and careful measurement. Others suggest methods that have not survived in any historical record. The spheres are not unique to Costa Rica. Similar objects have been found in Mexico, in Bosnia, in various locations around the world. Some of these are clearly natural and concretions formed by geological processes that sometimes produce surprisingly round shapes. Others are clearly artificial, and in the middle ground, where natural and artificial blur together, arguments continue about what counts as evidence of human craftsmanship. The Costa Rican spheres are definitely artificial. Tool marks are visible on their surfaces. They cluster near ancient settlement sites. They represent intentional effort, deliberate creation, meaningful activity. But what did they mean? What were they for? Why did a culture that grew crops and made pottery and traded with neighbors across the region decide to spend generations shaping boulders into balls? We do not know. The spheres keep their secrets round and smooth and perfect, silent in the jungle that has grown back around them. Let the spheres roll gently through your imagination. Picture them sitting in morning mist, beaded with dew, casting round shadows on the forest floor. They have been waiting for 1,000 years. They do not mind waiting a little longer. In Turkey, near the modern city of Sanliurfa, there is a hill that should not be interesting. It looks like any other hill in the region. Gentle slopes, scattered limestone, sparse vegetation surviving in the dry heat. Local farmers had plowed around it for generations without giving it much thought. In 1994, a shepherd noticed something strange protruding from the soil. A carved stone. Excavation began, and within months, archaeologists realized they had found something extraordinary. Buried beneath the hill were massive stone pillars arranged in circles, carved with elaborate reliefs of animals and abstract symbols. The site was called Göbekli Tepe, and it would change everything we knew about prehistoric civilization. Radiocarbon dating placed the construction at approximately 600 BC. 1,600 years ago, 4,000 years before the pyramids, 6,000 years before Stonehenge, at a time when, according to conventional archaeology, humans lived as small bands of hunter-gatherers without permanent settlements or complex social organization, and yet someone built Göbekli Tepe. Someone quarried pillars weighing up to 50 tons. Someone carved them with sophisticated reliefs of lions and foxes and scorpions and birds. Someone transported them to this hilltop and erected them in precise arrangements. Someone organized labor on a massive scale, coordinated effort across decades or centuries, and then deliberately buried the site under thousands of tons of rubble. The pillars show no signs of domestic habitation. There are no storage pits, no cooking hearths, no accumulated debris of daily life. Göbekli Tepe was not a settlement. It was something else. A temple, perhaps. A gathering place. A monument to beliefs we cannot reconstruct from stone alone. The implications are staggering. Complex social organization is supposed to emerge from agriculture. First, you grow crops. Then you develop surplus. Then you build cities and monuments and priesthoods. The sequence seemed clear, supported by evidence from 100 different sites across the globe. Göbekli Tepe inverts the sequence. Here, the monument came first. Here, people gathered to carve and worship and celebrate before they settled down to farm. Here, belief preceded bread. Ritual preceded routine. How did they do it? How did hunter-gatherers organize labor forces capable of quarrying 50-ton pillars? How did they feed the workers, coordinate the effort, maintain commitment across generations? How did they develop the skills to carve sophisticated art without the settled surplus that supposedly enables artistic development? We do not know. The conventional model of human development cannot explain Göbekli Tepe. Something is missing from our understanding. Some capability, some organization, some motivation that we have failed to account for. The site continues to yield surprises. Only a small fraction has been excavated. Ground-penetrating radar suggests dozens more circles buried beneath the surface. The hill that should not be interesting may contain the most important archaeological discovery of our time, or it may simply demonstrate how wrong we can be about the past, how limited our models are, how much we have yet to learn. Let Göbekli Tepe rest in the darkness of your mind like the pillars rest in the darkness of the earth, buried, waiting, holding secrets that have waited 11 millennia for someone to uncover them. Your body is so heavy now, so still, the weight of ages pressing you gently down into sleep. In the highlands of Peru, lines stretch across the desert floor, thousands of them, geometric shapes and stylized animals and abstract patterns, carved into the rock by removing the dark surface stones to reveal the lighter ground beneath. The Nazca lines, they are called, and they have puzzled researchers since they were first photographed from aircraft in the 1920s. The scale is immense. Some lines run straight for kilometers. Some figures are hundreds of meters across. The spider is 50 meters long. The hummingbird stretches for more than 100 meters from beak to tail. The entire complex covers nearly 1,000 square kilometers of desert plateau, And here is the strangest part. The figures can only be seen from above. Standing on the ground, you see nothing but rocks and dirt. You have to be in the air, looking down, to perceive the patterns. You have to be a bird or something else that flies. Who made them? The Nazca people, who flourished between 200 BCE and 600 CE, almost certainly created at least some of the lines. Pottery fragments and wooden stakes found along the figures matched Nazca artifacts from known settlement sites. The techniques required are not mysterious. Remove surface stones, reveal lighter soil, avoid disturbing the work. Patient labor over generations could produce even the largest figures. But why? Why create art that cannot be seen by human eyes from the ground? Why invest generations of effort in patterns that only become meaningful from an impossible vantage point? Theories abound. The lines might be ritual pathways, walked by priests or pilgrims as acts of devotion. They might be astronomical markers, aligned with stars or solstices, or the movements of celestial bodies. They might be messages to gods who dwelt in the sky, pleas for rain or fertility or protection. They might be territorial markers, visible to neighboring peoples who climbed the surrounding hills. They might be nothing more than large-scale art, created for the joy of creation, meaningful in the making rather than the viewing. Or, and this is the theory that captures imaginations even as it strains credibility. The Nazca people might have been able to see their lines from above. They might have possessed hot air balloons or been visited by beings who could fly or had some other means of aerial observation that has not survived in the archaeological record. The balloon theory is not entirely absurd. The Nazca made beautiful textiles tightly woven enough to hold hot air. Reed boats from the region could serve as gondolas. Torch flames could provide lift. Several experimenters have built and flown balloon replicas using only materials available to the ancient Nazca. The technology is possible, but no evidence of balloon construction has been found. No depictions of flight appear in Nazca art. No accounts of aerial voyages survive in the oral traditions of descendant peoples. The balloons remain speculation, possibility, without proof. And the lines remain, stretched across the desert floor, visible only to the birds and the satellites and the tourists who fly over in small planes, looking down at patterns that should not exist, wondering what the ancient people were thinking when they scraped away the rocks to reveal the figures beneath. Let the lines trace themselves across the desert of your mind. Hummingbird and spider and monkey and hands. Straight lines run into horizons you cannot see. Patterns you are too close to perceive. Let them exist without explanation. Let them be beautiful without being understood. The Piri Reis map was drawn in 1513 by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. It shows the coastline of South America and the western coast of Africa with reasonable accuracy for its time. It also appears to show the northern coastline of Antarctica, a continent that would not be officially discovered for another 300 years. The map is compiled from older sources as Peary Rocks himself notes in inscriptions on the surviving fragment, he claims to have used charts from the time of Alexander the Great, maps from Arab cartographers, and a chart made by Christopher Columbus that has since been lost. He assembled these sources into a composite, trying to create the most accurate picture of the known world. If the Antarctic coastline on the map is accurate, and some researchers believe it depicts features that are now buried under ice, then someone must have surveyed that coast before the ice sheet formed. The last time Antarctica was ice-free was at least 6,000 years ago. Some estimates push the date back further, to 15,000 years or more. Who was mapping Antarctica in prehistory? How did their knowledge survive to reach Peary Rest through chains of copying and transmission that stretched across millennia? What else did they know that has been lost? The alternative explanation is less dramatic, but more likely. The coastline on the Peary Rice map does not actually match Antarctica very well. The scale is wrong. The orientation is wrong. The features do not align with modern surveys. What looks like Antarctica may simply be Terra Australis, the hypothetical southern continent that European map makers routinely included to balance the land masses of the north. Peary Race may have drawn a convention rather than a coast, fantasy rather than survey. The debate continues. Both interpretations have advocates. Both can marshal evidence. And the map itself, preserved in a museum in Istanbul, offers no clarification. It shows what it shows, ambiguous and faded, a puzzle assembled from lost pieces by hands that have been dead for 5 centuries. Let the map float before you in the darkness. Coastlines fading into uncertainty, continents melting into the unknown, the edges of the world trailing off into blankness, where cartographers wrote, "Here be dragons," and hoped someone someday would fill in the gaps. You are drifting now, drifting like a ship on an uncharted sea, drifting toward sleep the way continents drift toward configurations that will take millions of years to complete. In the depths of the ocean, off the western coast of Japan, divers have photographed something unusual. Massive stone structures that appear to be carved with right angles and flat surfaces, resembling staircases and platforms and walls. The Yonaguni Monument, as it has come to be called, sits in water about 25 meters deep, spread across an area the size of several city blocks. Some researchers believe the monument is artificial, a temple complex perhaps, or a ceremonial platform, built when sea levels were lower and the site stood above water. The right angles look deliberate. The flat surfaces look worked. The overall layout suggests intention, design, purpose. Other researchers are equally certain the monument is natural. Sandstone in this region fractures along geometric planes. Erosion creates flat surfaces and sharp edges. Similar formations appear on nearby coastlines that have never been submerged. The appearance of artificiality is an illusion, a case of seeing patterns where only geology exists. The truth is difficult to determine. Underwater archaeology is challenging. The Yonaguni site is deep enough to require extended diving procedures. Currents are strong. Visibility varies. Careful excavation, the kind that would reveal tool marks or artifacts or construction sequences, has not been conducted. If the monument is artificial, it was built at least 8,000 years ago, before rising seas submerged a coastal shelf. This would make it one of the oldest monumental structures in the world, contemporary with Göbekli Tepe, evidence of sophisticated construction technology in deep prehistory. If the monument is natural, it is simply an interesting geological formation, one more example of how nature can mimic the works of humanity, how our pattern-seeking minds see intention in randomness. Both possibilities are remarkable in their own ways. An 8,000-year-old temple beneath the sea would rewrite our understanding of ancient Japan. A natural formation so convincingly artificial would remind us how easily we can fool ourselves, how eager we are to find meaning in the meaningless. The monument waits in darkness 25 meters down, where fish swim through corridors that may or may not have been carved by human hands. It does not care what we believe, it simply exists, stone in water, silent and patient, waiting for someone to prove what it is. Let the waters close over the monument in your imagination. Let it sink into the deep blue darkness where questions dissolve and certainty fades. Let it become just another shape in the endless dark, one more mystery settling into the sediment of time. The stones of Karnak stretch across the countryside of Brittany, France, thousands of standing stones arranged in rows and circles, erected between 4,500 and 3,300 BCE, covering an area of more than 4 kilometers. No other site in the world has as many megaliths in such dense concentration. The stones vary in size from small boulders to towering pillars 10 feet tall. Some rows are relatively straight. Others curve and meander. Some alignments point toward astronomical events. Others seem to follow no pattern that modern researchers can discern. Who put them here? The Neolithic peoples of Brittany, whose other remains suggest a culture of farmers and herders without writing or complex social hierarchy. They dragged stones from quarries and beaches, dug holes, erected pillars, and moved on to the next stone, again and again, for over 1,000 years. Why? The honest answer is that we do not know. Astronomical observatory is one guess. The stones might mark solstices and equinoxes and lunar standstills. Sacred processional way is another. Pilgrims might have walked between the rows as an act of devotion. Territorial marker, ancestor memorial, calendar, temple, artwork, all of these have been proposed. None have been proven. The local legends tell of a Roman legion turned to stone by the wizard Merlin. They tell of a saint who petrified an army of pagans. They tell of giants and fairies and demons, because when you cannot explain something, you invent stories that fill the silence with meaning. Modern archaeologists are more cautious in their storytelling. They measure angles and survey alignments and analyze pollen from ancient soil samples. They build models and test hypotheses and write papers full of conditional language. Possibly, potentially, suggests, may indicate. The stones do not confirm or deny. They simply stand as they have stood for 6,000 years in rows that lead somewhere we cannot follow, marking something we cannot remember. Let the stones stand in the darkness of your mind, row after row, stone after stone, stretching toward a horizon you cannot see, ancient and silent and patient. They have been standing since before the pyramids. They will be standing when you wake. Your breath is barely there now, the softest whisper of air, in and out, in and out, like wind between standing stones, like waves against buried monuments, like time itself, moving so slowly you cannot feel it. In South Africa, in the gold mines near Klerksdorp, miners have been finding strange objects for decades. Small spheres of dark stone, perfectly round, with parallel grooves running around their equators like the seams of a baseball. The host rock is nearly 3 billion years old, from an era when nothing but bacteria inhabited the earth. The spheres have become famous among collectors of anomalous artifacts. They are offered as evidence of prehistoric intelligence, of ancient technology, of visitors from other worlds who left behind remnants of their presence billions of years before humans existed. Geologists have a simpler explanation. The spheres are concretions, mineral nodules formed when groundwater deposits dissolved minerals in layers around a central nucleus. The grooves are not carvings, but growth features, places where different mineral phases meet, lines of weakness where weathering attacks the stone preferentially. Similar concretions form in sedimentary rocks around the world. Some are perfectly spherical. Some have grooves or rings or other features that suggest artificial origin. All of them, as far as can be determined, are natural products of geological processes that require only time and chemistry and the patient accumulation of mineral layers. The Klerksdorp spheres are probably the same. Interesting, beautiful even, but not artificial, not evidence of intelligence in the Archean eon, not proof of anything except how nature can mimic the products of design. Probably, the counter-argument is that some spheres appear too perfect, too regular, too geometric to be accidental. Some collectors claim the spheres rotate by themselves when placed on flat surfaces, as if they contained gyroscopic mechanisms. Some enthusiasts have had spheres analyzed and found metallic cores of unusual composition. Most of these claims cannot be verified. Most of the spectacular spheres remain in private hands, unavailable for scientific study. Most of the evidence is anecdotal, passed from collector to collector, growing more impressive with each retelling. The spheres may be natural, they probably are natural, but in the gap between may and certainly, the mystery survives. And in mining tunnels kilometers beneath the South African surface, workers still occasionally crack open a rock and find a perfect stone ball inside, rolling it in their fingers, wondering. Let the spheres roll through your imagination, round and smooth and ancient, formed in darkness, found in darkness, returning now to the darkness of sleep. The ancient world is full of objects we cannot fully explain. Maps that show coastlines not yet discovered, mechanisms that anticipate technology not yet invented, structures that require organization not yet possible, artifacts that appear in strata too old for their existence. Most of them have explanations, misidentifications, contaminations, coincidences, frauds. The human desire to find mystery where none exists, to see patterns in randomness, to believe that the past was more wonderful than the present. But some of them, a stubborn, irreducible few, resist explanation. They sit in their museum cases and storage drawers, labeled with question marks, waiting for someone to understand them. They challenge our timelines. They complicate our models. They remind us that history is not a straight line, but a tangled web, full of loose threads and missing connections. Maybe none of them matter. Maybe every mystery will eventually be solved, every anomaly explained, every gap filled. Maybe the official story is correct, and all the strange objects are just errors in the record, noise in the signal, static that means nothing. Or maybe the official story is incomplete. Maybe there are chapters missing. Maybe there were people and events and knowledge that we have forgotten, lost in catastrophes, or simply faded from memory, leaving behind only scattered artifacts that we dismiss because we cannot fit them into the narrative we have constructed. We do not know. We cannot know. The evidence is fragmentary. The past is mostly silence, but the objects remain. The iron cube, the crystal skulls, the Baghdad batteries, the Antikythera mechanism, the Nazca lines, the Yonaguni monument, the Kluxdorp spheres, the Piri Reis map, the stone rows of Karnak, the carved pillars of Göbekli Tepe. Each one a question, each one a possibility, each one a small rebellion against the certainty that claims to know what was and was not possible in worlds we have never visited. Let them be. Let them exist. Let them wait in their cases and their ruins and their ocean depths, keeping their secrets, holding their questions, patient as stone, silent as sleep. You are almost gone now, almost entirely surrendered to the darkness. The mysteries are fading. The questions are dissolving. The weight of history is becoming the weight of rest, pressing you down, down, down into the dreamless deep. The archaeologists will continue their work tomorrow. They will brush dirt from buried surfaces. They will photograph and measure and catalog. They will write reports and argue interpretations, and sometimes, just sometimes, they will find something that does not fit, and the objects will continue their waiting. They have been waiting for thousands of years. They have been waiting for millions of years. Some of them have been waiting since before humans existed, before life existed. Since the early earth cooled and minerals began their slow dance of crystallization and compression. They are patient. They do not need answers. They do not demand understanding. They simply are. And you are almost simply being now, almost pure rest, almost complete surrender. The thinking mind is quieting. The questioning mind is settling. The mind that needs to know is finally accepting that some things are unknown and that this is acceptable, and that sleep is more important than certainty. Rest now. The mysteries will wait. They have always waited. They will wait forever if they have to. But you need to rest. You have carried questions long enough. You have wondered long enough. You have tried to understand long enough. Let it go. Let it all go. Let the iron cube sink back into its cold seam. Let the crystal skulls close their empty eyes. Let the standing stones stand without you watching. Let the underwater monuments dissolve into the dark water that covers them. Let the desert lines fade into the desert that holds them. Let everything fade. Everything fading, gone. Only sleep remains. Only the soft darkness at the edge of dreams. Only the place where questions do not exist, because the mind that asks them is finally, beautifully, completely at rest. Sleep, sleep, the silence between stars, the stillness between heartbeats, the pause between breaths. Rest there, float there, be nothing there. The artifacts do not need you. The mysteries do not need you. The past does not need you. Sleep now. Sleep, and let the ancient silence hold you, gentle, complete, forever, until morning comes and the questions return. But that is hours away, hours and hours. For now, only sleep, only rest, only peace. The kind of peace that stones know. The kind of rest that artifacts find in their cases. The kind of silence that fills empty tombs and buried temples and forgotten archives. But before you drift completely away, let us linger a moment longer in the space where wonders live. There are more stories waiting, more objects sitting in their cases, more questions hovering in the dusty air of archives and excavation sites. You do not have to pay attention. You do not have to remember. Just let the words wash over you like water over stones, smoothing everything, softening everything, carrying you deeper into rest. In the mountains of Peru, at an altitude where the air is thin and the sun burns with fierce intensity, there is a fortress that should not exist. Sacsayhuaman, the ancient Inca citadel above the city of Cusco, is built from stone so massive and fitted so precisely that modern engineers struggle to explain how it was constructed. The largest blocks weigh more than 100 tons. They are not rectangular. They are not uniform. Each stone is uniquely shaped, cut with multiple angles and faces, fitting against its neighbors like pieces of an impossibly complex three-dimensional puzzle. Some stones have as many as 12 angles, each one meeting perfectly with the angles of adjacent blocks. You cannot slip a sheet of paper between the stones. You cannot insert a knife blade. The joints are so tight, so precise, that they have remained stable through 5 centuries of earthquakes that toppled Spanish colonial buildings all around them. How did the Inca do this? They had no iron tools. They had no wheels. They had no written language to record their techniques. They had only bronze implements, stone hammers, and human muscle. And yet they moved 100-ton blocks up mountain slopes and fitted them together with a precision that would challenge modern construction equipment. The official explanation involves ramps and levers and the patient labor of thousands of workers over decades. The stones were shaped by pounding with harder stones. They were moved by dragging on log rollers or sliding on wet clay. They were fitted by trial and error, lifting and lowering and adjusting until the surface is mated perfectly. The explanation is plausible. The explanation may even be correct. But standing before the walls of Sacsayhuaman, watching the afternoon light play across surfaces that have not shifted in half a millennium, something in you whispers, is that really all there is? Did they really do this with hammers and ramps and patience? Or did they know something we have forgotten? Some technique for softening stone, perhaps, making it malleable and then letting it harden again. Some method of acoustic levitation, using sound waves to reduce the effective weight of massive blocks. Some understanding of forces and materials that was never written down because everyone knew it, until the Spanish came and the old knowledge was lost. These suggestions are speculative. They are probably wrong. But the walls remain impossible and undeniable, forcing us to choose between accepting that ancient people were more capable than we imagined, or believing that something important is missing from our understanding. Let the stones settle into the foundation of your rest, heavy and ancient and fitted perfectly together like the minutes of a long night leading toward morning. In the deserts of Egypt, far from the famous pyramids and temples, there is a box cut from solid granite. The Serapeum of Saqqara contains dozens of these boxes, each one weighing between 60 and 100 tons, each one carved with a precision that seems impossible for the tools supposedly available to ancient Egyptian craftsmen. The boxes are called sarcophagi, containers for the mummified bodies of sacred Apis bulls. But the engineering required to create them goes far beyond anything needed for burial purposes. The interior surfaces are flat to within thousandths of an inch, over lengths of several feet. The corners are perfect 90-degree angles. The lids, themselves weighing 30 tons or more, fit the bases with such precision that modern surveying equipment struggles to detect imperfections. How do you carve the inside of a granite box to such tolerances? The outside can be shaped by pounding and grinding, but the interior, you cannot swing a hammer inside a closed space. You cannot apply leverage. You cannot see what you're doing once you get more than a few inches below the rim. Some researchers believe the boxes were somehow cast, poured into molds as a liquid, and allowed to harden. Others believe they were carved using techniques we do not understand. The conventional explanation is simpler: patient labor with bronze tools and sand abrasives, working for years on a single box. But the boxes remain, and visitors who run their hands across the interior surfaces, feeling the smoothness that rivals polished glass, cannot help but wonder, what else could do this? What are we missing? Let that mystery rest in the darkness like the boxes rest in their galleries, still and silent and perfectly fitted to the space they occupy. Your body is becoming lighter now, not heavier, lighter, as if gravity is slowly releasing its hold, as if you are floating up through layers of history, rising toward the surface of sleep. In northern Germany, near the town of Nebra, a farmer digging in 1999 found something remarkable: a bronze disc about the size of a dinner plate, covered with gold symbols representing the sun, the moon, and a cluster of stars that appears to be the Pleiades constellation. The Nebra sky disk is the oldest known representation of the cosmos. It was made approximately 3,600 years ago during the Bronze Age by people we know almost nothing about. It was found with bronze swords and axes, buried on a hilltop for reasons we cannot determine. The disk shows an understanding of astronomy that surprised researchers. The cluster of stars is accurately positioned relative to the sun and moon. Two gold arcs along the edges may represent the positions of sunrise and sunset at the solstices. A curved band at the bottom might be a ship, or a rainbow, or a celestial marker whose meaning has been lost. Someone in Bronze Age Europe was watching the sky carefully enough to record what they saw. Someone understood enough about celestial cycles to create a portable reference showing the relationships between sun and moon and stars. Someone valued this knowledge enough to craft it in precious metals and bury it with valuable weapons. Who were they? We do not know. The disk sits in a museum in Germany now behind glass, illuminated to show the subtle variations in the gold and bronze, and the stars on its surface continue their silent testimony to knowledge that existed before history began to be recorded. Let the disk rotate slowly in your imagination, sun and moon and stars turning together in an eternal dance that was already ancient when the Bronze Age smiths hammered gold into patterns. In the deserts of Peru, there are lines that run straight for kilometers across the barren landscape. The Nazca lines, geometric shapes and stylized animals carved into the earth by removing dark surface stones to reveal the lighter ground beneath. The scale is immense. Some figures are hundreds of meters across. The spider is 50 meters long. The hummingbird stretches for more than 100 meters from beak to tail. And here is the strangest part. The figures can only be seen from above. Standing on the ground, you see nothing but rocks and dirt. You have to be in the air looking down to perceive the patterns. You have to be a bird or something else that flies. Who made them? The Nazca people, who flourished between 200 BCE and 600 CE. Why did they make them? That is less clear. The lines might be ritual pathways. They might be astronomical markers. They might be messages to gods who dwelt in the sky. Or perhaps the Nazca people had some way of seeing their creations from above. Hot air balloons made from tightly woven textiles, platforms on high mountains. Something we have not imagined. The lines do not explain themselves. They simply exist, stretched across the desert floor, visible only to those who can rise above them. Let the lines trace themselves across the desert of your mind. Hummingbird and spider and monkey and hands. Patterns you cannot see because you are too close. Meanings you cannot grasp because the context has been lost. In Egypt, carved into temple walls, there are images that have puzzled researchers for over a century. The Dendera reliefs show shapes that some interpret as lotus flowers and others interpret as something else entirely. The controversy centers on what appears to be a bulbous shape with something snake-like inside it. Conventional interpretation says it represents the Egyptian creation myth, the first lotus emerging from primordial waters, the serpent symbolizing divine energy. Alternative interpretation sees something different, a shape that resembles an electrical discharge tube, a glass bulb, a filament inside. Evidence, perhaps, that the ancient Egyptians possessed electric lighting thousands of years before Thomas Edison. The truth is probably mundane, religious symbolism, not technology, mythology, not engineering. But the debate continues because the images are ambiguous enough to support multiple readings. And that ambiguity is itself interesting. It reminds us that ancient art does not always show what we think it shows, that symbols can have meanings we cannot access, that the past may be stranger than we imagine, or may be exactly what the experts say it is. We cannot know for certain. The craftsmen who carved these images are dust. The priests who understood their meaning are silent. We can only look and wonder. Let the images blur at the edges of your perception. Forms that might be one thing or might be another, shapes that suggest without confirming. The ambiguity of ancient art, where certainty is always out of reach. In Iraq, in a museum that may or may not still exist after decades of conflict, there once sat a clay jar containing a copper cylinder with an iron rod inside. The Baghdad battery, as it came to be called, has generated endless speculation since its discovery in 1936. If you fill a jar like this with an acidic solution, you create a simple galvanic cell. A battery? A source of electrical current. Experiments with replicas have generated up to 2 volts using grape juice as the electrolyte. Did the ancient Parthians know about electricity? Were they using these jars for electroplating, or for medical treatments, or for something we have not considered? Or were the jars simply storage vessels, their metallic contents coincidentally arranged in a pattern that we, with our modern knowledge, recognize as potentially electrical? No ancient text describes the jars or their use. No other examples have been found in similar contexts. The one artifact sits alone, offering possibilities without confirmation. Let the battery rest in its jar. Let the copper and iron sleep in their configuration. Let the current, if there was ever current, fade into the same darkness that holds all ancient things. Your body has grown so still now, so quiet. The questions are becoming distant, like sounds heard through deep water. The mysteries are becoming soft, like shapes seen through closing eyes. In the waters off the coast of Japan, beneath 25 meters of ocean, there is a formation that looks like it was carved by human hands. The Yonaguni monument features right angles and flat surfaces, staircases and platforms and walls. Some researchers believe it is artificial, a temple complex or ceremonial platform, built when sea levels were lower and the site stood above water. The right angles look deliberate, the flat surfaces look worked. Other researchers are equally certain it is natural. Sandstone fractures along geometric planes. Erosion creates flat surfaces and sharp edges. Similar formations appear on nearby coastlines that have never been submerged. The truth is difficult to determine. Underwater archaeology is challenging. Careful excavation has not been conducted, and so the monument waits. 25 meters down, neither proven nor disproven. A question suspended in cold water. Let the waters close over the monument. Let it sink into the deep blue darkness where certainty dissolves. Let it become just another shape in the endless deep, one more mystery that may never be resolved. In South America, there are walls that have stood for centuries, built by civilizations that left no written records of their techniques. The stones are massive. The fitting is precise. The engineering is remarkable. At Ollantaytambo, at Sacsayhuaman, at dozens of sites across Peru and Bolivia, there are constructions that challenge our assumptions about what ancient people could accomplish. Blocks weighing 50 tons or 100 tons, moved up mountain slopes without wheels, without iron tools, without any of the equipment we would consider necessary. How did they do it? The official answer involves ramps and levers and enormous labor forces. The stones were shaped by pounding with harder stones. They were moved by dragging on rollers. They were fitted by trial and error. The answer is probably correct, but it does not quite satisfy. Standing before walls that have not shifted in 500 years of earthquakes, touching joints so tight that a knife blade cannot penetrate, something in you whispers, is that really all? Maybe that is all. Maybe the Inca and their predecessors were simply more capable, more patient, more determined than we give them credit for. Maybe we underestimate what human beings can accomplish with time and motivation and skill. Or maybe they knew something we have forgotten. Something about stone or gravity or the organization of labor that made the impossible merely difficult. We may never know. The last people who understood these techniques died centuries ago. We are left with the walls themselves, silent witnesses to achievements we cannot replicate. Let the walls stand in your imagination. Stone fitted to stone, mountain raised upon mountain, the weight of ancient ambition pressing against the modern world. The stories are ending now. The journey is almost complete. You have traveled through museums and ruins, through deserts and jungles, through time itself. And what have you learned? Perhaps nothing that can be put into words. Perhaps only a feeling, a sense of how much we do not know. A respect for the achievements of those who came before. An appreciation for the mysteries that remain unsolved. The artifacts are real. The questions are real. The uncertainty is real. But so is the need for rest. So is the call of sleep. So is the gentle surrender that comes when the mind finally releases its grip on the need to understand. You do not need to understand. Not tonight. Not now. You only need to rest. The iron cube will still be mysterious tomorrow. The crystal skulls will still be controversial. The standing stones will still stand in their circles. The Nazca lines will still stretch across the desert. The underwater monuments will still wait beneath the waves. None of it requires your attention. None of it demands your wakefulness. None of it will change if you sleep. So sleep. Let the day end. Let the questions fade. Let the mysteries become distant like lights on a far shore, visible but unreachable, beautiful but beyond your grasp. You are part of the great river of time that flows from the deep past toward the unknown future. The artifacts are eddies in that river. The mysteries are currents that we do not understand. And you are a small vessel, floating on the surface, carried by forces you cannot see toward destinations you cannot know. Let the river carry you. Let the current guide you. Let the darkness ahead become the darkness of sleep, warm and welcoming and complete. The ancient world will still be there when you wake. The questions will still be waiting. The mysteries will still be mysterious. But you will be rested. You will be renewed. You will have the strength to wonder again, to question again, to marvel again at the strangeness of the world and the achievements of those who came before. For now, let that all go. For now, let there be only silence, only peace, only the soft embrace of sleep. The artifacts are sleeping. The monuments are sleeping. The stones and the bones and the painted walls are all resting in their darkness. And you are joining them, becoming part of the great stillness that holds all things, becoming part of the ancient quiet that has persisted since the world began. The questions do not need answers tonight. The mysteries do not need solutions. Nothing needs anything except sleep. And sleep is here. Sleep is waiting. Sleep is holding out its arms and asking you to fall into them. Fall, let go, surrender. The ancient world catches you. The darkness holds you. The silence keeps you. And there is nothing left but rest. Nothing left but peace. Nothing left but the long, slow drift toward morning, carried by currents older than memory, rocked by rhythms that have rocked every sleeper since the first human closed their eyes and trusted the darkness to bring them safely to another day. Trust it. Let it carry you. Let it take you where you need to go. The artifacts will wait. The questions will wait. Everything will wait. Only sleep cannot wait. And sleep is here now. Sleep is everything now. Sleep, sleep, sleep. In the forests of Central America, buried under centuries of jungle growth, there are cities that rival anything built in Europe or Asia during the same periods. The Maya civilization constructed pyramids and palaces and astronomical observatories, developed sophisticated mathematics and writing, and then collapsed, abandoned their cities, disappeared into the forest that slowly swallowed their monuments. Why? What happened to the Maya? The question has puzzled researchers for over a century. Theories abound: drought, warfare, environmental degradation, political collapse. Each theory has evidence to support it. Each theory has gaps. The truth is probably a combination of factors, a perfect storm of circumstances that made the old way of life impossible. But here is what makes the Maya collapse truly mysterious. The people did not disappear. Millions of Maya descendants still live in Central America today. What collapsed was not a people, but a system, a way of organizing society. The Maya forgot how to read their own writing. For over 1,000 years, The hieroglyphs carved on their monuments were incomprehensible even to their descendants. Only in the 20th century did scholars begin to crack the code, piecing together the sounds and meanings of symbols that had been silent for centuries. What else was lost? What knowledge disappeared when the scribes stopped training apprentices and the libraries rotted in the humid air? What stories faded when the storytellers no longer had audiences who cared? We will never know. The collapse took most of the answers with it, and the forest continues to grow over the stones. Let the jungle close over the ruins in your imagination. Green leaves and hanging vines and the calls of tropical birds. Stone faces staring up through the canopy at a sky they have not seen for centuries. Let it become a place of rest, a place of forgetting, a place where even civilizations can sleep. In the mountains of Turkey, there is a place where thousands of people once lived underground. Derinkuyu is the largest of the Cappadocian underground cities, a complex of tunnels and chambers carved into the soft volcanic rock, extending at least 18 stories below the surface. The tunnels are narrow, the ceilings are low, the air is cool and still. At its peak, Derinkuyu could shelter perhaps 20,000 people. There were living quarters and storage rooms, wine cellars and oil presses, chapels and schools, stables for animals, everything needed for long-term survival underground. Why would anyone live this way? The answer is probably danger. Armies swept through Cappadocia repeatedly over the centuries. Invaders who could not find you could not kill you. Someone understood geology. Someone understood airflow. Someone understood defensive architecture. But we do not know their names. We do not know their stories. We know only the tunnels they left behind, empty now except for tourists who wander through the dim passages. Let the tunnels close around you like a cocoon, cool stone walls, still air, the silence of spaces that have been silent for centuries. Let yourself sink into that underground darkness, safe from the surface, hidden from danger, at rest in the embrace of the patient earth. In Japan, in a museum in Tokyo, there is a sword that has been declared a national treasure, the Kogarasu Maru, Little Crow. It was forged over 1,000 years ago, and its blade still holds an edge sharp enough to cut silk floating in water. Japanese sword making reached heights of craftsmanship that have never been equaled. The folding and hammering of steel, the differential hardening that creates a hard edge and a flexible spine, the polishing that reveals patterns in the metal like clouds or waves. The techniques were developed over centuries by smiths who passed their knowledge from master to apprentice. And then the chains were broken. The Meiji Restoration ended the age of samurai. The old smiths died without training successors. The knowledge that had accumulated over centuries began to fade. Some of it was recovered, but some knowledge was lost forever. Certain steel compositions, certain heat treatments, the secrets of specific master smiths, which they took to their graves. We are heirs to a fraction of what our ancestors knew. We have forgotten more than we remember. We have lost more than we have kept. Let the blade rest in its scabbard. Let the steel sleep after 1,000 years of sharpness. In the deserts of Australia, there are rocks covered with images, painted figures in red and yellow and white, depicting humans and animals and beings that are neither fully human nor fully animal. The oldest of these paintings may be 60,000 years old, the oldest known art on Earth. For 60 millennia, Aboriginal Australians have been creating images on stone. They have been encoding knowledge and belief in history in forms that outlast memory, outlast language, outlast the individuals who created them. Some of the images are clear. Animals that still exist. Animals that once existed but are now extinct. But some of the images are mysterious. Figures with elaborate headdresses. Beings with strange proportions. Shapes that do not correspond to anything in the natural world. What did these images mean to the people who made them? We can speculate, but we cannot know with certainty what they were meant to communicate. We can only stand before them separated by a gulf of time so vast that even imagination cannot bridge it. Let the painted figures watch over your sleep. Ancient eyes on ancient stone, keeping vigil as they have kept vigil for 60,000 years. In the frozen north of Siberia, where the permafrost has kept secrets for tens of thousands of years, hunters and prospectors sometimes find things that should not still exist. Mammoth tusks, perfectly preserved, the ivory still white and workable after being frozen since the Ice Age. Mammoth carcasses with flesh still intact, as if the animals had died only recently instead of 12,000 years ago. And occasionally, something stranger. In 2013, researchers working on a remote island in the Arctic Sea found a mammoth that had been frozen so perfectly that liquid blood flowed from the carcass when they cut into it. Blood that had remained liquid for more than 40,000 years, preserved by some combination of cold and chemistry that we do not fully understand. The discovery raised an obvious question. If blood can survive that long, if cells can remain intact for 40 millennia, then perhaps the mammoth could be cloned. Perhaps the Ice Age giants could walk again, recreated from genetic material that the permafrost had kept safe. Scientists are working on it. They have extracted DNA from frozen specimens. They have compared it to elephant genomes. They have begun the long, slow process of trying to resurrect a species that has been extinct since our ancestors painted their images on cave walls. Whether they will succeed is uncertain. The technical challenges are enormous. The ethical questions are complex, but the possibility exists. And it exists because the ice kept something alive that should have been lost forever. What else has the ice preserved? What other secrets are waiting in the frozen ground, waiting for the climate to shift, waiting for someone to dig deep enough, waiting to emerge into a world that has changed beyond recognition since they were buried? The permafrost is melting now. Global temperatures are rising. The frozen archive that has kept its treasures for millennia is beginning to release them one by one into the modern world. Ancient viruses, preserved animals, objects that fell or were buried or were hidden, emerging from the ice like messages from the past. Most of what emerges will be mundane. Bones and tusks and the ordinary debris of ancient life. But some of it may be extraordinary. Some of it may change what we think we know. We cannot predict what the melting ice will reveal. We can only wait and watch and try to preserve what emerges before it decays in the unfamiliar warmth of the present day. Let the ice melt slowly in your imagination. Vast white expanses becoming rivers of cold water. Ancient things rising to the surface. Secrets releasing into the air after 40,000 years of frozen silence. Let it happen slowly. Let it happen gently. Let it become part of the drift towards sleep. In the Mediterranean, off the coast of Lebanon, divers have discovered the remains of what may be the oldest continuously inhabited city on Earth, Byblos. The name itself may have given us the word Bible, because it was through this port that papyrus flowed from Egypt to Greece, carrying the earliest written words of Western civilization. The oldest layers of Byblos date back 8,000 years. 8,000 years of continuous human habitation in a single spot. 8,000 years of people being born and living and dying and passing on what they knew to the next generation. Beneath the modern city, beneath the medieval ruins, beneath the Roman temples and the Phoenician harbors, there are layers we have not yet reached. Layers that may preserve knowledge of how civilization began. Layers that may contain artifacts from before the invention of writing, before the development of bronze, before any of the technologies we associate with ancient culture. What did the first people of Byblos know? What skills did they possess? What beliefs did they hold? We can only guess, reading backwards from later layers, inferring from fragments, constructing stories from silence. But the layers are there. The evidence is there, beneath our feet, beneath the buildings of the living, beneath the monuments of the dead, waiting for someone with the resources and the patience to dig deep enough. Archaeology is expensive. It is slow. It destroys what it studies. And there is always more past than there are people willing to uncover it. Most of what happened will never be known. Most of what existed will never be found. But some of it will be. Some of it will emerge from the ground or the water or the ice, forcing us to revise our assumptions, expand our timelines, reconsider what we thought was possible. That is the promise of the past. That is what keeps researchers digging and diving and sifting through sediment. The hope that the next discovery might be the one that changes everything. Or maybe the next discovery will just be another part, another bone, another fragment that fits neatly into the existing picture. That is more likely. That is almost always what happens. But the hope remains. The mystery remains. The sense that something important is still waiting to be found. Let that hope rest now. Let it become part of the softness that surrounds you. Tomorrow is for hoping. Tonight is for rest. In India, carved into the walls of ancient temples, there are images that have puzzled visitors for centuries. Intricate patterns that seem to represent something more than decoration. Geometric forms that suggest mathematical understanding. Figures that might be astronomical, or might be mythological, or might be something else entirely. The temples of Khajuraho are famous for their erotic carvings, but surrounding those famous images are thousands of other carvings that receive less attention. Patterns of interlocking circles, spirals that suggest celestial motion, grids that might encode calculations or calendars or something we have not imagined. Similar patterns appear on temples across South and Southeast Asia. They appear on monuments separated by hundreds of miles and hundreds of years. They suggest a tradition of sacred geometry that was widespread enough to be common, sophisticated enough to be impressive, and mysterious enough to be largely incomprehensible to modern observers. What did these patterns mean? Were they purely decorative, or did they encode knowledge that the initiated could read? Were they religious symbols, or mathematical diagrams, or maps of something we cannot identify? The craftsmen who carved them left no manuals. The priests who understood them left no explanations. The knowledge, if it was knowledge, has been lost, and we are left with beautiful patterns that may or may not mean anything beyond their beauty. Perhaps that is enough. Perhaps the patterns do not need to mean anything. Perhaps they can simply be admired for their intricacy and their age and the skill required to carve them into hard stone with simple tools. But the suspicion remains. The feeling that there is something here we are not seeing. Something encoded in the geometry that our eyes perceive but our minds cannot decode. The temples stand, the carvings endure, the patterns repeat across centuries and continents, waiting for someone who can understand them. Let the patterns swirl gently in your imagination, circles within circles, spirals within spirals, geometric forms that suggest meaning without revealing it. Let them become part of the darkness behind your eyes, shapes that exist without explanation, beauty that needs no justification. In the mountains of Bolivia, at an altitude where breathing is difficult and the air is thin and cold, there is a gateway carved from a single block of stone. The gateway of the sun at Tiwanaku, decorated with a central figure surrounded by smaller winged figures carved by people who left no written records of their language or their beliefs. The Tiwanaku civilization flourished between 300 and 1000 CE, centuries before the Inca. They built massive structures from stone blocks fitted together without mortar. They created a city at 12,500 feet above sea level in an environment that seems hostile to large-scale construction. And then they vanished. The city was abandoned. The people dispersed. The knowledge of who they were and what they believed passed out of memory, leaving only the stones and the gateway and the endless speculation of those who came later. The central figure on the gateway of the sun holds staffs in each hand. The surrounding figures run or fly toward the center. The meaning might be astronomical, representing the sun and its attendant planets. It might be mythological, depicting a creator deity and his servants. It might be something else entirely, something we cannot guess because the context has been lost. Every culture that has studied the gateway has proposed interpretations. Every interpretation reveals as much about the interpreter as about the original intention. We see what we are prepared to see. We understand what we are able to understand. The Tiwanaku people understood something else. They saw something else when they looked at this carving. And that vision, that understanding has been lost, buried with the last person who knew what the symbols meant. Let the gateway stand alone in your imagination, a door to nowhere, an entrance without a building, a threshold between the known and the unknown, between the present and the past we cannot reach. In the British Museum, locked away in secure storage, there are thousands of cuneiform tablets that have never been translated. Clay rectangles covered with wedge-shaped marks, pressed into the mud by scribes in ancient Babylon and Assyria, preserving words that have not been read since the empires that created them fell. Most of these tablets are probably mundane, administrative records, business correspondence, now legal documents, the bureaucratic paperwork that every civilization produces and that usually survives better than its literature or its wisdom. But some of them might be extraordinary. Some of them might contain stories we have never heard, knowledge we have forgotten, insights that could change our understanding of the ancient world. We will not know until they are translated, and translation is slow. It requires expertise that few people possess. It requires funding that few institutions provide. It requires patience that spans decades as scholars work through collections accumulated over a century of excavation. Meanwhile, the tablets wait. They have been waiting for 4,000 years. Another few decades is nothing to them, but to us, the waiting feels significant. Somewhere in those storerooms, there might be answers to questions we have not yet thought to ask. There might be stories that would captivate millions. There might be knowledge that would revolutionize our understanding of history. Or there might be just more receipts, more inventories, more lists of goats and grain, and the wages paid to workers long dead. We cannot know until we look, and we cannot look until we learn, and we cannot learn until we try. The tablets sit in their drawers. The marks on their surfaces hold words that no one has spoken for millennia, and somewhere perhaps a scholar is working late, puzzling over a fragment, trying to coax meaning from mud. Let the tablets rest in their drawers. Let the unread words remain unspoken. Let the ancient silence be part of the silence that surrounds you now. Your breathing has become so gentle, so slow, like the settling of sediment on an ancient lake bed, like the accumulation of dust on a museum shelf, like the passing of centuries over monuments that barely notice the change. In the caves of southern France, there are paintings that have been dated to more than 30,000 years old. Animals rendered with stunning accuracy and beauty, preserved on limestone walls by conditions that have remained stable since the Ice Age. Chauvet Cave contains some of the oldest and most sophisticated cave art ever discovered. Lions and horses and rhinoceroses drawn by hands that have been dust for 300 centuries, displayed against surfaces that have not changed since the images were created. The artists who made these paintings lived in a world we can barely imagine. Ice sheets covered much of Europe. Mammoths and cave bears roamed the landscape. Humans were few and scattered, surviving in small groups, hunting and gathering through environments that would kill most modern people within days. And yet they made art. They took time from the urgent business of survival to create images of the animals they hunted and feared and revered. They carried torches into dark caves and spent hours rendering forms on stone with pigments they had ground and mixed themselves. Why? What drove them to create beauty in the midst of hardship? What satisfaction did they find in making images that they knew would outlast them? We cannot ask them. We can only look at what they left behind and wonder at the skill, wonder at the motivation, wonder at the continuity that connects us to people who lived and died 30,000 years ago. The paintings remain, the caves remain, and the impulse that created them, the human need to make marks that persist, to leave traces that endure, to communicate across time with those who come after. That impulse remains as well, undiminished after 300 centuries of human history. We are the same species that painted those caves. We carry the same genes, the same drives, the same capacities for beauty and meaning. The Ice Age artists are not strangers. They are ancestors. They are us, separated only by time. Let that connection rest gently in your mind. 30,000 years, 300 centuries, and still the paintings speak. Still we understand. Still we look at the animals on the cave walls and feel something that the original artists intended us to feel. Let the cave walls close around you like the darkness that comes before sleep. Ancient images flickering in torchlight. Eyes of animals watching from the stone, the smell of smoke and ochre, and the deep earth that has kept these treasures safe since before history began. The night is almost complete now. The stories have done their work. The questions have faded into something softer than questions, something more like dreams. The artifacts will still be there in the morning. The mysteries will still be waiting. But for now, they can rest as you rest. They can sleep as you sleep. They can be silent as you are silent. The iron cube in its museum case, the crystal skulls behind their glass, the standing stones in their circles, the cave paintings on their walls, the underwater monuments beneath their waves, the buried cities beneath their jungles, all of them resting, all of them waiting, all of them part of the same vast silence that holds you now. You are not separate from these things. You are part of the same stream of time that created them and preserved them and carried them to this moment when they can be wondered at and admired. You are descended from the people who carved the first tools and painted the first caves and raised the first stones. Their blood flows in your veins. Their genes shape your body. Their impulses to create, to preserve, to leave marks that will endure are your impulses too. When you sleep tonight, you sleep as they slept, in darkness, in surrender, in the ancient rhythm of rest and waking that has shaped every human life since the first humans emerged. Let that connection comfort you. Let the weight of all those ancestors press you gently into sleep. Let the knowledge that you are part of something vast and old and continuous carry you into the darkness where consciousness dissolves. The mysteries can wait. They have been waiting for thousands of years, as the questions can wait. They will still be questions in the morning. Everything can wait except sleep. Sleep cannot wait. Sleep asks for you now. Sleep reaches for you now. Sleep holds you now. Let it. Let everything go. Let the world become dark and quiet and still. Let the artifacts fade into the distance. Let the questions dissolve into the silence. Let your mind release its grip on the need to know, the need to understand, the need to make sense of things that may never make sense. Just rest. Just breathe. Just be. The ancient world is holding you. The ancient silence is keeping you. The ancient darkness, older than any mystery, older than any artifact, is wrapping around you like the arms of something that has loved you since before you were born. Sleep now. Sleep completely. Sleep as the stones sleep. Sleep as the paintings sleep on their cave walls. Sleep as the questions sleep in the minds of those who have wondered enough for one night. The morning will come. The light will return. The mysteries will be there waiting as they have always waited, as they will always wait. But for now, for these precious hours, there is only this, only darkness, only silence, only peace, only sleep, sleep, sleep. In the waters near the Greek island of Antikythera, divers in 1901 recovered something crusted with coral and corroded by salt water. It was only when researchers began cleaning the fragments that they realized what they had found. Gears, dozens of them, precisely cut teeth, meshing with one another in complex arrangements. A mechanism of bronze clockwork, lost when a Roman ship sank sometime in the 1st century before Christ. The Antikythera mechanism was an astronomical calculator, an analog computer operated by hand crank, capable of predicting the positions of the sun and moon, the phases of the lunar cycle, the timing of eclipses. Someone in the ancient world understood gear ratios and differential mechanisms. Someone designed and built a precision instrument that would not be equaled until the astronomical clocks of medieval Europe. 1,000 years later, how many other mechanisms were built? How many were melted down for their bronze? How much has been lost that we will never recover? The mechanism sits in a museum in Athens now. It is real. It is undeniable. And it proves that our assumptions about ancient technology are incomplete. In China, there are hundreds of pyramid-shaped mounds scattered across the landscape near the city of Xi'an. They are burial tombs, constructed over centuries for emperors and nobles of ancient dynasties. The most famous is the tomb of Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor to unite China under a single rule. His tomb is guarded by the terracotta army. Thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, each with unique facial features, arranged in battle formation as if ready to defend their master in the afterlife. The tomb itself has never been opened. Ancient texts describe rivers of mercury flowing through a miniature landscape, pearls embedded in a ceiling to represent the stars, crossbow traps to kill intruders. Soil samples around the mound show mercury levels far above normal, suggesting the ancient accounts may be accurate. What else is inside? What treasures, what artifacts, what knowledge might be preserved in that sealed chamber? We do not know. The Chinese government has decided not to excavate, at least for now. The technology to safely open such a tomb without damaging its contents does not yet exist. So the emperor sleeps on, surrounded by his silent army, guarded by poisons and traps, waiting for a future when we can meet him without destroying what he preserved. Let the army stand guard over your rest. Thousands of stone soldiers, frozen at attention, watching over the darkness where ancient emperors dream. In the Highlands of Scotland, there are circles of standing stones that have puzzled visitors for centuries. The ring of Brodgar, the stones of Stillness, Callanish on the Isle of Lewis. Each site arranged with obvious intention, each site aligned with astronomical events, each site built by people who left no written records of their purposes. The stones were erected between 3000 and 2000 BCE. During the Neolithic period, they required enormous effort to quarry and transport and erect. Communities that had barely begun to farm, that had no metal tools, that lived in small scattered settlements, somehow organized to create monuments that still stand today. Why? The stones do not answer. They simply stand, as they have stood for 5,000 years, marking something we cannot remember, celebrating something we cannot name. Let the stones stand in the darkness of your mind, gray shapes against a gray sky, wind moving through the grass around their bases, the sound of nothing happening over and over forever. In the Amazon rainforest, researchers using aerial surveys have discovered something unexpected. Hidden beneath the canopy, visible only when the leaves fall or when technology penetrates the green darkness, there are geometric earthworks. Squares and circles and interconnected lines, some covering areas larger than city blocks. The earthworks were built between 200 and 1300 CE by civilizations we know almost nothing about. They predate European contact by centuries. They suggest population densities and social organization far beyond what was previously believed possible in the Amazon. How many people lived here? What did their society look like? How did they transform the forest without destroying it? We are only beginning to understand. The earthworks were invisible until we developed the technology to see them. What else is hidden in the forest, waiting for eyes that can perceive it? Let the forest canopy close over the earthworks. Green on green on green, hiding shapes that have been hidden for centuries, keeping secrets that the trees have kept since before Europeans knew this land existed. The night grows deeper. The stories grow softer. The questions fade into something more like dreams. In every corner of the world, there are places where the past breaks through the present. Objects that do not fit. Structures that should not exist. Knowledge that appeared too early or survived too long. Most of them have explanations. Most of them can be made to fit the official story, with enough effort and enough assumptions. But some of them resist. Some of them sit in their cases and on their hilltops and in their underground chambers, stubbornly refusing to be ordinary, quietly insisting that we do not know everything, that the past is stranger than our textbooks admit. Maybe they are all mistakes, misidentifications, hoaxes, the wishful thinking of people who want the world to be more mysterious than it is. Or maybe some of them are real. Maybe some of them represent genuine anomalies, genuine gaps in our knowledge, genuine evidence of things we have not yet imagined. We cannot know, not tonight, not with certainty, but we can rest with the uncertainty. We can let the questions float beside us in the darkness, companions rather than problems, mysteries to be appreciated rather than solved. The artifacts will still be there in the morning. The questions will still be waiting. The researchers will resume their work, brushing dirt from buried surfaces, arguing about interpretations, slowly adding to the sum of human knowledge. But for now, for these quiet hours, the work can stop. The wondering can pause. The need to know can release its grip on your tired mind. You have traveled far enough tonight, through museums and ruins, through jungles and deserts, through underground cities and underwater monuments, through 60,000 years of human creativity and 6,000 years of recorded history and countless millennia of whatever came before. That is enough traveling. That is enough wondering. That is enough. Now there is only rest, only the soft darkness where questions dissolve, only the gentle weight of sleep pressing down on your willing body, only the ancient silence that has waited for you since before you were born. The stones are sleeping in their circles, the artifacts are sleeping in their cases, the ruins are sleeping under their blankets of jungle and sand, and you are finally, completely, beautifully joining them, sleeping as the stones sleep, resting as the artifacts rest, dreaming whatever dreams come to those who have wandered too long among mysteries. Let it happen. Let everything go. Let the night have you. The morning will bring new questions, new mysteries, new objects pulled from the earth that do not quite fit the story we tell ourselves. But that is tomorrow's concern. That is the waking world's burden. For now, there is only this, only darkness, only peace, only the endless patience of things that have waited for millennia and will wait for millennia more. They can wait one more night while you sleep. They can wait forever if they have to. But you cannot wait. Your body demands rest. Your mind demands silence. Your spirit demands the surrender that only sleep can provide. Give in. Let go. Fall into the darkness that has been calling to you since the first word of this long journey. The darkness where iron cubes and crystal skulls and underground cities and 60,000-year-old paintings all blur together into the same soft nothing. The darkness where questions are not questions anymore. The darkness where you are not you anymore. Just breathing, just heartbeat, just the slow pulse of consciousness dissolving into the deep. Sleep now. Sleep completely. Sleep as if you were an artifact yourself, waiting in a dark gallery for someone to discover you. Sleep as if you were a stone in a circle, standing vigil over ceremonies no one remembers. Sleep as if you were a word in a dead language, silent for 1,000 years, dreaming of the day when someone might speak you again. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The ancient world holds you now. The ancient silence keeps you now. The ancient darkness, older than any artifact, older than any mystery, older than the earth itself, wraps around you like a blanket, and there is nothing left to do, nothing left to wonder, nothing left to be. Just rest, just peace, just the soft, endless drift of dreams. Let it take you, let it have you, let it be everything. Sleep, sleep, sleep. The weight of millennia settling softly upon you. The patience of stones becoming your patience. The silence of forgotten temples becoming your silence. Rest now in the company of mysteries. Rest now in the embrace of the unknown. Rest now as countless generations have rested before you, surrounded by questions they could not answer, comforted by darkness they could not explain. The artifacts are dreaming their stone dreams. The monuments are dreaming their mountain dreams. The painted caves are dreaming their pigment dreams. And you are dreaming too, or soon will be, joining the great river of human consciousness that has flowed through every night since the first night. Let the river carry you. Let the current take you. Let the ancient darkness wrap around you like the arms of everyone who has ever loved you, holding you safe until the light returns. Sleep, deep and complete, peaceful and whole, until the questions call you back, until the mysteries need your wondering again, until the morning brings new puzzles and new marvels and new reasons to be amazed by the strangeness of this world we have inherited. But that is later. That is tomorrow. For now, only sleep, only rest, only peace. The ancient silence has you now, and it will keep you safe until the dawn. The mysteries are patient. They have waited for thousands of years. They can wait a little longer while you rest. The stones are patient. They have stood in their circles since before history began. They can stand a few more hours while you sleep. The artifacts are patient. They have sat in their cases through generations of visitors. They can sit a little longer while you dream, and you can finally be patient too. Patient with yourself. Patient with the questions that have no answers. Patient with the darkness that surrounds you and the silence that holds you and the rest that heals you. Let patience be your gift to yourself tonight. Let rest be your reward for all the wondering you have done. Let sleep be the ancient mystery you finally surrender to. The one question you do not need to answer. The one door you can walk through without knowing what lies on the other side. Sleep, sleep, sleep.